Good morning, everybody. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is indeed the Jamal Thomas Show, and I'm glad that you all can join me. As I often tell you, whatever voice, I said that wrong, wherever you are in the world, you could be pretty much anywhere. You could be pretty much doing anything, but you are listening to this voice, and I appreciate you for doing so. I have a damn good show for you today. Sometimes I get lucky with these shows because sometimes it's like I tend to try to book my guests on either Friday or Saturday. And you look at the calendar and you be like, God, man, who am I going to get? And just so happens somebody becomes available. Warwick, what is his last name? He's the first time coming on the show, Warwick Powell. He is economist, geopolitical analyst. I was reading over his Substack materials. He is fantastic. I am just lucky to have him. Dimitri Lascaris, he's going to be here at 8 o'clock, and we're going to round the show out with Michael Maloof. Michael Maloof, because Donald Trump has effectively changed the timeline for his ultimatum that was going to be ignored from the very beginning of him uttering ultimatum. And he went from 50 days to 10 to 12 days. I mean, he can't even be specific about the number of days. Now, this is supposed to be the 100% tariffs on, let's say, third-party users of Russian materials. This is going to get ignored. And not just ignored, it is going to be fascinating to watch India, China, Saudi Arabia, UAE, etc., come to terms with what Donald Trump is doing as Russia tells him to go F off, which is effectively what Medvedev said. Medvedev made the point of saying, you can do these ultimatums, but at the end of the day, what this is going to end up with is a war, not against them, but against you. Because what Medvedev is pointing out is this stuff is going to blow up in your face. These bluffs, we don't care. We're not Iran. We're not North Korea. You have no power in this process. Zero, none. And make all the ultimatums you want. At some point, you're going to hit an ultimatum where you're going to find yourself in a bad end. And Medvedev is correct in this, in his point of view on this. Russia's not changing what they're trying to accomplish on the battlefield. Full stop. And there's not anything that the U.S. can do about it, short of going to nuclear war, which, of course, is not really a win. That just effectively ends the world. So that is where that is taking place. Trump's bluff is going to get called, and then Donald Trump is effectively going to blow up the price of energy across the world. And Russia will still continue what they're taking place now with Ukraine, who in a nutrition warfare battle, it's becoming clearer and clearer that they don't have the capacity to keep this, let's say, intensity up. And you could see it even in Petrovsk. You have this thing where it seems like Russian sabotage forces was able to break through the creases because Ukraine didn't have enough manpower in order to maintain legit lines. And you can imagine that it's not going to get better, that it's only going to get worse. You can drag all the women and children into the battlefield you want, that it's not going to get better, that it's only going to get worse. So there's that. The other thing is a fantastic article by Alistair Crook, which is infuriating. It's infuriating on a few points. On the first point, and just to give you the name of it, it's on his Substack. And yes, this video will be demonetized. I will tell you right off the bat, this video will be completely demonetized. I have to be honest with you. There are times where I would do a title where I would be stark in that title because I want to make a point for that title. Maybe YouTube does it. I'm very doubtful. I've seen some of the stuff they've demonetized in the past. But right here, the last phase before genocide, the Jewish state is erecting a ghetto with a horrifying sentence. And he says, Conflict Forum compilation is tracking strategic developments in Israel, 27th July 2025. They're British, so they do their dates backwards. Pieces are drawn from analysis and commentary by leading Israeli commenters, predominantly published in Hebrew. Now, what's aggravating about this to me is that this is not erecting a ghetto, the last phase before genocide. It is and has been a genocide. It is infuriating to me for the people who have lied, who have acted as if Israel was fighting a war against babies and angry women, that Israel was somehow as if they were fighting another military, another army. This is a nuclear power that is going out and has been murdering people in the civilian population, has been doing so for 2 years. And it is obvious that they've been doing it for 2 years. And so to come around, and I'm not saying Alistair Crook is, but I'm saying there are many Johnny-come-latelys that now they're seeing skeletal kids fall because, Israel has starved them to death. And you see every rando media in the West that would give these passive headlines about millions of people being starved. Yeah, dude, I pray that there is a hell. I pray that hell is hot. And I pray that you die in a grotesque way before you are sent straight to hell. You have been defending that genocide. You don't need to come to the ends of a ghetto before you can acknowledge the direction that something is taking place. How many dead babies do you need to see? How many hospitals do you need to see raided? How many doctors do you need to see murdered? Nurses murdered, press murdered. How many of this do you need to see before you realize Israel has two solutions? One, murder everybody, expel them out the country. Those are your two. Those are your two. And so the Johnny-come-latelys of like, hey, looks like these guys are building a ghetto. Yes, that is exactly what they're doing. And for Alistair Crook to make this point of saying it is a grotesque turn of a phrase to say the Jewish state is about to commit a genocide. It's a grotesque phrase, genocide period. I don't care whether they're Jewish. I don't care whether they're Israelis. I don't care whether they're Germans. I'm saying that these are human beings that we've effectively allowed this to happen to as a world. And with the US assuming a huge predominance of guilt because we've dumped 70 to 80% of all of the bombs, bullets, dollars, the killings, and everything else. We've invested deeply and heavily into this. So Crook, he is right. He is right. But it is deeply frustrating for Crook. I'm not going to say Crook because I like Alistair Crook. He's fantastic. But for many people, looking at you, Piers Morgan, to come to this assessment now that the crowd is effectively moved in a different direction, and they're like, hey, this looks bad. Yes, it looks bad, but it has looked bad for the last year and a half, if not 2 years. And you can go back before October 7th, and it looked bad. And it looked bad. I want to bring in my guest. He's here. I pointed out to my audience before you got here, I am deeply fortunate for you to join me. Warwick Powell. Warwick Powell is an adjunct professor at Queensland University, a professor working on the intersection of China, digital technologies, supply chains, financial flows, and global political economy and governance. And for some reason, that doesn't do you justice. I was looking at your resume. How you doing, man? You doing okay today?
I'm doing okay. It's been a busy day. What about yourself?
Yeah, it's been a long day, but everything's all right. Everything's good. I want to start with this trade deal between the EU and the United States. I was going over your articles on this. I want to play something for you. So this was, where is it? Was it von der Leyen who said this? No. Listen to right here, Donald Trump. So Donald Trump is effectively talking about tariffs for the rest of the world, meaning, hey, you got this deal that's pretty brutal to Europe. What are you going to put the tariff rate on the rest of the world? What are the amount? What is that going to be? Listen to something Trump says, because it's something that you bring up in your article, and I realize after the fact, he has a point, meaning you have a point.
For the world.
What percent will that? You said that we're going to set essentially a tariff for the rest of the world.
For the world.
What percent will that tariff be?
I would say it'll be somewhere in the 15 to 20% range.
So maybe 15 or 20 or?
No, I said, I sort of know, but I just want to be nice. I would say in the range of 15 to 20%.
Okay. You made the point that if that's true, and that what Europe is getting is a 15% tariff, then the entire world is getting around a 15 to 20% tariff, which means that all of it is effectively muted because all of it is effectively the same. The effectively Americans, are going to pay a higher rate on the products that they get, but it's not like you're getting a product from Europe and it's more expensive than a product you get from rando country. Go into that force, because the headlines, screaming headlines were, oh my God, von der Leyen is humiliated. Oh my God, von der Leyen sold out Europe. This is horrible. I think even my headline was like a shocking defeat of Europe or something to that effect. The guest that I had on yesterday, he pointed out, he disagreed with me on this. And I'm realizing that maybe this is more theatrical than what it came across as. Give me a take on this.
Yeah, look, I think that there's a few layers to this, and it's worth trying to peel those layers and work our way through, because these sorts of issues are invariably complex. The question about whether or not the European Union, under its current leadership in particular, so I normally just call them Brussels, right, just to distinguish them from Europe more broadly. So Brussels, the view from Brussels, in many regards, had long sold out the rest of Europe. So the idea that the current event, which was the meeting yesterday in Scotland between President Trump and Ursula von der Leyen, somehow represents a particularly unique event in that scope, I think is probably it's probably forgetting the fact that it was long sold out. The point that I make about the deal, if you will, and I make really 2 points. The first point is that, in fact, the Ursula von der Leyen was negotiating in part from a position of relative weakness, but she was largely viewing the world through the prism of Brussels and how Brussels saw its priorities. And its priorities and its greatest fear was the military abandonment of Europe by the United States. So over the course of the last 6 months, particularly under the Trump presidency, there have from time to time been noises coming out of Washington that Trump was going to withdraw arms supplies to Ukraine. He was trying to push the Europeans to spend more. There was all this talk that the United States really had priorities in other parts of the world. And so Brussels, and there's actually 2 nodes in Brussels, but they're very well coordinated. So we're talking about NATO and the European Commission, were petrified that the comforts that they'd become used to of the American safety security blanket was going to disappear. And for them, the overriding objective was actually to tie the United States in. And they've tried a lot of things over the course of the last 6 months to increasingly draw the United States back into the conflict in Europe. And in fact, if you look at the evolution of the engagement from the 20th of January, when Trump was inaugurated, to today, you would say that the level of engagement in a conceptual sense and a rhetorical sense, at least from the president, is totally different today than it was then. So coming into the election, through the election, and then in the early period of his current presidency, the talk was always about ending the war, the forever wars. This wasn't his war. It was a pointless activity, etc., etc. Today, of course, Trump, in effect, is owning the war. So the European Commission and NATO have actually been incredibly successful, together with their allies inside the Beltway, to bringing the administration, that from their point of view was a risk because it was vacillating, back to their game. Okay, so the first point is actually that this negotiation event that took place, if you can call it that, in Scotland, reaffirmed that as the priority out of Brussels. So von der Leyen basically agreed to everything that Trump wanted, and then on top of that, committed to purchasing $750 million worth of American military industrial complex output. So in that schema, she understood Trump, I think, very, very well. A lot of people have a very negative view of von der Leyen for lots of understandable reasons. But there is a tendency, as a result of having a very critical perspective of her policy stances and her general approach to Europe's interests or not, to also think that she's entirely incompetent or bereft of any basic nous. And having worked in amongst people in high office, one thing I will say is that they often come with a certain degree of sewer rat cunning, and have a very keen sense of personal survival. And I think that some of those instincts came to play. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this idea that she totally ratted out Europe. Now, the claim on that front is that she, the tariff stuff, which I'll come back to because that was the core of your question, but the promises of the $600 billion investment and the $250 billion a year LNG purchase, as well as the military-industrial complex acquisitions. Now, when you look seriously at these commitments, you actually realize that they're basically undeliverable. On the investment one, we actually saw within 24 hours an article in Politico, which reported that the EU itself admitted that it had no way of making this promise real. It couldn't enforce it. It wasn't the European Union or the European Commission's money. It was expected to be private capital from private enterprises. So it's never going to happen. The second one, which is the $250 billion per year purchase of LNG, simply won't materialize. And it's got nothing to do with intentions. But we saw, again, in Reuters overnight, analysts commenting that there are actually some serious practical reasons why it simply won't happen. The practical reasons is the supply chain.
Right.
There's simply not enough, cheap enough, available feedstock out of the shale oil fields. There's limits to the processing capacity in the United States. There's limits to storage. There's limits to transportation, and there's limits to storage in Europe itself. Right? So it's not going to happen. So that's the second one down. Now, whether or not von der Leyen understood that her promises were never going to materialize because of real-world material constraints, who knows, right? Maybe she didn't understand that, or maybe she actually did. And the military-industrial complex stuff was a classic. Just hang on. And it was a classic in the sense that when you look at the state of the American military-industrial complex, it's actually operating at more or less peak capacity.
Right.
It is behind in billions of dollars of orders already globally, and it is not in a position to catch up. So the promises of spending more money on the American military-industrial complex, unless the American military-industrial complex reprioritized their production systems and their production line, simply isn't going to see any of this commitment converted into reality. So why is all this happening? It's happening in large part, Jamal, because it enables big numbers to be announced. So that's the first thing. So in large part, this is about theatre, the announceable big numbers. The second thing, and I think this is definitely the case in relation to the industrial systems, and in one of my recent articles, I talked in detail about the Boeing situation, right? So Boeing wasn't part of this European discussions,
Right.
Probably because we've got Airbus in Europe. But Trump has been selling Boeings to everyone else he could, find, and Boeing itself is is about 5,000 airplanes on the backlog. That's about 10 to 12 years of production. They're not catching up anytime soon. Trump sold 350 Boeings, and all of that is going into the backlog. And in these instances, what's happening with these orders is that for publicly listed companies, they're announcing them and then leveraging them as off-balance sheet opportunities to secure structured finance, to improve the valuation of businesses and to support cash flow. So this is a financialization activity. That's what's going on. So that's
just sort of, I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to make sure the audience understands that they're effectively taking on those and saying, hey, we have these unfunded items that are supposed to come up. And then
So what we've got, so Boeing is a
Making
great
the most.
example. So Boeing secures via the high-level agreements achieved MOUs and intents to purchase. Some of those intents may even become orders, but even if they don't become orders, they're treated as high probability of becoming real because they come with political imprimatur. So they are announced to the market. Boeing is a publicly listed company, and it is obligated to make announcements to the market that are material to the operations of the company. And so Boeing has announced these additional orders as part of its forward order book. These orders don't necessarily go onto the financial balance sheet per se, but they do function as a security for finance providers
Wow.
on the basis that they are almost as good as having contracts in place.
Right.
And some of them will fall over in the future, right? But some of them won't. And so these forward positions are used to enable companies like Boeing to raise finance to support operations, cash flow, and OPEX, basically. So that's what's going on in large part. And it, of course, boosts valuations. The tariffs one is really interesting. So we need to really understand how it is that tariffs, in theory, can work. So tariffs are a tax on a particular category of products. Right. And those products are imported products. So that's the first thing to understand, that it is a tax that is applied to imported products. It's applied in large part so as to level out the price disadvantage that domestic producers have compared to the import products.
Mm-hmm.
So if the domestic product, something similar, costs $200 and the imported product costs $100, if you wanted to equalize that to make the pricing situation equivalent, you'd have to add 100% tariff on the imported good. And with the tariff on top, the product is now costing $200 into the marketplace. So that's the first core idea to understand about tariffs. The aim is to level out the competitive price disadvantage or differential between domestically produced things and similar or equivalent imported things. Now, why do you want to do that? Well, the policy objective in doing that is to support the domestic producer in the face of stiff price competition. That's one. But the other reason is to penalize the importer to a point where they will consider stopping importing, or from the exporter's point of view, stopping exporting goods into the United States and moving the factory to the United States and operating there. So if I use the example that I used before of the $200 versus the $100, if you wanted to move the producer of the $100 thing and have them set up a factory in the United States, you would need not only to hit them with a 100% tariff on their $100 product, you would need to hit them with 110% tariff so that the imported good is now disadvantaged against domestic production, causing the company to say, gee, our products are too expensive now in the US market, but we know how to make this stuff and we can go into the US market and set up a factory there and make things and sell them for $200. So that's the theory. Now, if you did that, the aim then is to say, okay, are we going to target products of a certain type? It could be motor cars, it could be steel, it could be rubber ducks. It doesn't matter what it is. You could target products by product types, categories of things. They may be for strategic reasons. They may be because there's political constituencies that support, certain things, whatever it happens to be. Another way of using tariffs is to target products from particular countries. And you can do that, obviously, to try to impact the businesses in those countries. with a few possible objectives in mind. One is to cause them to relocate. One is to cause them pain. Another one is to cause them to set up shop in your own country. What has happened over the course of the last 6 years with the tariffs from the first Trump administration is where they have caused companies to seek to relocate, they've relocated to other lower cost producing areas and continue to export to the United States. And so the United States now in Trump 2.0 is in a position where it continues to be concerned about the financial trade deficit. It is frustrated by the fact that Tariffs 1.0 didn't lead to companies setting up in America, but actually just arbitraged the system and moved to other low-cost producing areas and essentially got around the first round of tariffs, which are targeted principally at China. And now they're saying, well, we're going to stop this thing called transshipment, right? And so they're going to apply tariffs right across the board. That'll teach them a lesson. There won't be these little countries where there's a little tariff shadow where I can, sneak off to and repackage something or set up a little cheap factory and then send it on to America. Nope, there'll be tariffs across the board. Well, the minute you do that, you've actually just raised the prices of everybody. And the minute that happens, you haven't changed the relative price differential. And unless there is relative price differential, you actually don't achieve your objectives that you set out to achieve. So in the end, everybody's price goes up when they land in the United States, and they go up by roughly the same percentage.
Yeah.
So we're back to square one. The difference now is that the United States will be confronted with an environment where products across the board are levied with a tariff. So what happens? The simple story is, well, the consumers will pay. There is actually a slightly more complex story, and it tends to unfold in some phases. The first phase is that importers will seek to negotiate with the producers to absorb the price difference. So if there's a 10% tariff, you try to negotiate a 10% discount. Sometimes that can happen, right? It really depends on negotiating power and market power. Well, that hasn't happened this time. The second thing that happens is that the importer absorbs that tariff and doesn't pass it on. And in fact, that tends to be what happens mostly. The importer, in the first instance, will say, I'm going to suck this up. I'll pay the tariff. You got to remember that when goods land, the department that handles customs evaluates the value of the import based on the paperwork, and then issues what is in effect an invoice to the importer or the import agent or the tariff amount. And until that tariff is paid, usually, the goods don't leave. Right? So you've got to pay the tariff and then the goods leave. So the importer is stuck in a position where they're saying, well, I've got to pay the tariff so that the goods can leave. Will I pass on some or all of that tariff to my downstream customer? And in the first instance, what happens typically is that the importer absorbs it in the hope of not losing the customer, because they're worried that if they pass on the price, their competitor won't, and they'll lose the customer. So all the importers in the first round try to keep pricing the same. But you can only do that for so long until your own margins and your own cash flow are impacted, and you have no choice but to begin passing on the costs. The other thing that happens is that some companies actually begin increasing prices under the cover of tariffs, even if they aren't directly affected by tariffs. So they're exploiting market confusion to increase pricing anyway. And we call this sellers inflation. Right? So the sellers, even when they're not affected, are exploiting this general tariff mayhem and all this news and information and confusion, and they increase their prices anyway. So the typical result is that prices do go up, and the United States is going to be forced, in effect, to adjust to a higher cost, lower standard of living economic system. So this is the sort of pattern that is unfolding. And of course, like any system, Jamal, it will and can adapt. right? But this is what's going to happen. And you'll notice about 2 months ago, the talk became, well, instead of American consumers being, the thing that everyone in the world desired, it became, well, it's about time Americans pulled their belt in a bit and stopped buying 60 Barbie dolls and only bought 2. And so we shifted from the American consumer as this cultural icon to the idea that the modern American consumer really is the epitome of thrift. And that to me was a fascinating cultural shift, because it actually admitted that tariffs were going to affect the spending power of American businesses and American households. So that's what's going on, I think.
Yeah. They are so contradictory, because Trump will make the argument prices aren't going to go up. And then he'd get angry at Jeff Bezos for potentially listing the price differential on the items as they, adjust their prices because of the tariffs that Donald Trump is passing. And to make this even worse, this idea of we're going to take in this money from tariffs, we're going to pass a tax cut to the rich, and we're going to have the poor and middle class, who have the least amount of spending income, pay effectively that money. Because, as you point out, we are the ones who are effectively going to ultimately end up paying that. Whereas people like Bezos, Musk, Trump are going to get a fantastic tax cut.
Look, there's a great book actually on inflation by a Scottish economist who has worked in the US for a very long time, whose name I've forgotten at the moment. It's been published this year, and it basically speaks of inflation not as a singular experience, right, which is what we often think of. The CPI rates 2.8 or 3.2 or whatever it is, right? Yeah. So there's this sense that there's this single measure. He actually looks into the demographic distribution of inflation as a proportion, or as a disproportionate impact on different income groups. And it is very clear that the lower the income, the greater the impact inflation has. And high-income households actually don't experience inflation in the way that low-income households do. The other thing that high-income households get the benefit from in terms of inflation is asset inflation. Right? So don't forget that as assets inflate, houses, land, capital, shares, stocks, etc., those households that own those things are actually benefiting from an improvement to their balance sheet. So asset inflation benefits the wealthy disproportionately. Consumer product inflation impacts the poor disproportionately.
Yeah, because the poor has to buy groceries, baby food. They don't have a choice. So they're stuck with that cost.
Yeah.
Wow. I want to go to something else. By the way, how do you think this is ultimately going to turn out? I mean, my assessment several months ago was stagflation, that ultimately you're going to get a recession and you're going to get people's standard of living going down. Is that accurate?
Yeah, look, I think the risk is that living standards are going to continue going down for the majority of Americans. That's actually not in the interest of the majority of Americans, obviously, but it's not in the interest of anyone else in the world either. Nobody in the world actually has an interest in an impoverished America. People have an interest in other countries doing well, especially when you are involved in trade and other things with them. You want other countries to be doing well. Unfortunately, I think that there is a high probability that the United States is going to experience, as I said, an adjustment to a higher cost and a lower standard of living economic system. That's the first thing that's going to happen. And that that could potentially lead to all sorts of ramifications. I don't know how serious they will be, because it depends a bit on how deep and how long these impacts are. But it's fair to say that when over 60% of American households report that they live paycheck to paycheck already, that over 20% of households report that they skip meals to pay mortgages or rent, that 13% of households are estimated by the US Department of Agriculture to be experiencing food insecurity in the United States. Add to that the personal debts and the rising delinquency rates. I think you've got a household sector that is already living on the edge. And as the impact of inflation starts to feed through into the system, the risk is that we're going to start to see some very, very serious social consequences, which could be quite destabilizing domestically. So higher inflation, lower economic growth, stagflation, rising unemployment, lower standards of living for the time being at least, possibly an increasingly disenfranchised working class. And as an anecdote, I can sort of probably add, just so that your viewers can fully visualize this. One area that has been growing in terms of demand in the last 12 months or so, and is projected to grow by about 12% compounded over the next 5 years, is demand for bulletproof glass. And that tells you something, right? Yeah. So a growing number of households, wealthy, are installing bulletproof glass, and there's probably a reason why they're doing that.
Bring on the revolution, right? Bring on the revolution.
Who knows what will happen, right? Social disquiet can build up a head of steam and become a sort of a congealed energy. But it's hard to know what direction it takes, and it's hard to know whether it fizzles out, whether it fragments, or whether it's contained in different parts of the country. Can small sparks become prairie fires? How does that get, let's call it, governed and managed by authorities, right? Trying to be as bland as I can, really, but if you're in the business of trying to maintain, let's call it, stability and calm in a community through policing, and things emerge that begin to disrupt the peace of the neighborhood, the risk is that policing gets pretty heavy-handed, and and we see this already, right? We see this on the news already, and so I do wonder, and I worry. I have many good friends who live in the United States, and I worry that the social situation is going to disintegrate, creating a lot of making America into an unsafe place, and again, that's actually not in the interests of anybody in the world.
So I'll give you a tangible example. The health CEO that got murdered, and the country cheered. They applauded. They called him a hero. That is pretty astonishing, right? A man gets murdered and the country applauds. Everybody hates healthcare companies in states, or at least people who have to pay for them or can't afford them. There's that. One other thing with that, Europe, 15% is still going to, on some level, damage European companies, correct? I mean, Europe is weird to me. For one, they've been putting all of this money out for defense that has been fleeing to the United States. I mean, we're talking about, 70% of the weapons, give or take. My number may be off, but it's not too far off, are coming out of the United States. So that's money coming out of the US. The sanctions went after Russian energy, something that was stable from the standpoint of Europe, or that no longer became stable. So they were paying 4 to 5 times as much coming out of the US for LNG, or Saudi Arabia, India, which was just Russian gas that they were playing the market for. And so they were seeing this kind of deindustrialization coming out of Europe, especially Germany. This can't be great for them. I mean, especially even if all of the prices are equal at 15%, you're still effectively looking at an American product at one price and a European product at another price, which is going to affect consumer behavior for them to buy the American product. Or that's incentive anyway. But correct me if I'm wrong on this.
Well, it'll affect all products because prices will go up, and therefore demand's going to fall anyway, right? So, so European producers will feel this along with exporters from other countries, and because that's the whole point, right? You're trying to make things more expensive so that they don't compete as effectively with domestic alternatives. That's the objective, and 20%, 15%, depending on your industry, is going to certainly cause some cash flow pain. It's going to impact revenues, obviously, as sales fall, but that's going to be across the board. And so in a relative sense, you'd say that it is no worse than the next country. But obviously, when all countries are experiencing a reduction in demand from the United States, they're going to be affected, on day one. The question is going to be how those industries and enterprises adapt to this new world. Can they find new markets? How do they do that? How do they compensate for the reduction in demand from the US market? Mm-hmm. Some industries and some enterprises will adapt better than others. The European situation is particularly challenging because the industrial sectors are already in a high cost operating environment, in large part courtesy of the problems with the energy supply in Europe. And that puts them in a very perilous position to be able to adjust and respond. They're not well positioned. Whereas if you look at firms in China, which are operating in very low energy cost environments, intensely competitive, incredibly lean operations, thin margins, high volume, they are in a position to move quickly into new markets and secure positions because they're offering high quality goods at incredibly low prices. So the challenge for Europe is to think through how it adapts in the first instance to this change in American demand. And secondly, how it structurally adapts in the longer term so that its industries are less exposed to the vicissitudes, the rises and falls and the capriciousness of one major market. They're longer term problems, and it's hard to see based on recent experience observing the ways in which the European Commission has made its public policy decisions that Europe in aggregate is well placed to handle this new environment. Now, what will this do? Well, it seems to me that this will continue to antagonize the emerging and bubbling centrifugal forces in Europe that are actually pulling Europe as a Western collective whole. The European Union is in a sense pulling it apart. And I say that in an analytical and descriptive sense without trying to be normative. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it's not for me to say necessarily. The point is at the moment is that there are clearly tensions between different countries around direction. And there are also significant and growing differences, it seems, within countries about various policies of those countries vis-a-vis the rest of Europe and Europe at large. So there's a lot going on now in the European body politic that lends itself to destabilizing the institutions of the European Union and the institutions of the European Commission. Whether that is what is needed for Europe as a whole to get the shake-up that it needs, I guess that's a matter for Europeans. But it seems to me, observing and trying to understand what's going on, that these forces are at work. The decisions that are being made by Brussels in the interests of Brussels' priorities, are actually exacerbating these tensions and dynamics. And so in some respects, what Brussels is doing is like an autoimmune reaction, where a belief that you're attacking the cause of your ailment is actually leading you to attack your healthy cells and kill yourself from the inside.
Mhm.
And the risk of Europe at the moment is autoimmunity gone off the rails.
One last question that I want to get you before you go. Secondary tariffs. So Donald Trump put out, I'm calling it a bluff. I called it a bluff before because Russia's not going to acknowledge it. But effectively, a 50-day ultimatum that was never going to be honored. That was never going to be acknowledged. Russia is not going to stop their military campaign just because Donald Trump, an untrustworthy actor across the board, has an utterance. I mean, in the States, they call him Taco Trump for a reason. Trump's always capitulates, whatever the acronym is. These are supposed to be 100% secondary sanctions on products coming out of Russia. I believe oil products or gas products coming out of Russia. What is going to be the effect of this? Because Russia's effectively said, we don't care. Do whatever you want. You have no capacity to affect our behavior. We have dealt with sanctions. This is like 24,000, 21,000 sanctions, some insane number. We're still moving along and we're still profitable. We don't care. But that is going to directly affect countries like India, Saudi Arabia, UAE, China, obviously. And I can't see how this works. The United States is trying to woo India. It's trying to come up with some kind of trade deal with China. It's supposed to be an ally with Saudi Arabia. I don't see how this is going to function in reality. But give me your take on this. You may have a different take.
Yeah, look, it's I think you're right in describing the current presidency as increasingly erratic and unreliable, right? So it's hard to now engage with the White House on the basis that what it says it does.
Right.
We've seen this already in the way that the Iran question was handled. You know, whilst talks were happening, bombs were launched. Promises made are frequently broken. And so I think that that's the first thing, is that most other countries are actually factoring in this erratic nature in their dealings. So they're very guarded now about anything that comes out from the White House. The second thing is to remember what these secondary sanctions or the secondary tariffs are meant to do. And again, they are meant to penalize countries that buy Russian energy products by levying a tariff on products that those countries then export to the United States. What's interesting about this is that you've got, as you say, a ongoing discussion with China about a trade agreement. And in the last 24 hours, the 90-day deadline for that one has been extended again. So it's been extended for the third time. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that in between all of this, there's the threat of the 100% tariffs on Chinese goods as the secondary, punishment, or even Lindsey Graham's bone-crushing tariffs of 500%.
Right.
So you've got confusion. You've now got the president saying that the tariffs for everyone else in the world will be 15 to 20%. So again, you've got 15 to 20%, you've got 90 days, you've got 50 days, you've got 12 or 10 days, you've got 500%, you've got 100%. So in that sense, it's an environment where I think it is impossible for serious counterparties to, in a sense, engage other than perhaps think through some possible scenarios. One scenario that I think we can be reasonably sure of is that none of them will stop trading with Russia. And so they will ignore the threat and in a sense lay down the gauntlet. Is that calling the bluff? Well, we'll know when President Trump reacts. The difficulty is that if you look at the timelines now and these secondary sanctions are imposed, he would need to act probably somewhere in the order of 70 odd days before the third deadline came into effect for the China discussions. So, you know, how is this going to unfold? My sense is that most of these countries have already made it quite clear to Russia that they won't be yielding to these sorts of threats. They will continue their trade because it's in their own national interest to do so. There may be other reasons why they continue to do this in terms of ensuring that that Russia is not isolated in the world, and they will have broader geopolitical reasons for that. And also, of course, to make it clear to the rest of the world that countries like this, particularly large ones, simply won't yield to being bullied. So I think where we're heading to, as all of this begins to consolidate or congeal, is a hastening of the processes of decentering of the United States economy. Often people say that the US is in decline. And as we touched on before, there are some things that are happening which probably lends themselves to that kind of description, you know, particularly the social issues, the longevity issues, the infant mortality questions, etc. They do lend themselves to thinking about the United States as in some kind of a decline. But in global terms, I tend to think that a more constructive way of describing what's happening and then analyzing what's happening is to see the system evolving where what's going on is that the United States is being progressively decentered. It's not unimportant. It's a big place, 350 million people, big economy, big military. You know, it's not, you know, on the bare bones of its bum, but it's no longer the center of the universe. And what's happening is that I think these actions by the White House is simply putting the accelerator down on the forces that have been driving decentering for the last 30 years. And we're going to wake up in 5 years' time, hopefully without nuclear fallout, with a world in which the United States will continue to be decentered. It won't be replaced by another big center. There are too many centers now coming up. And so we are seeing a multinodal ecosystem evolving, where the connective tissue between countries is much more complex. It's no longer a simple hubs and spokes world. It's really going to look like a spider's web, you know, with crisscrossing connections, with plenty of options. Right? So no single country is exposed to the whims of someone else. And it will be more complex. At times it will be a little bit more messy, and where conflicts don't get resolved by the big guy just telling you how things are going to be. And we're starting to see that, of course, play out. But where conflicts and differences invariably have to be resolved through, you know, the tedious and time-consuming work of good old-fashioned statecraft.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where we're heading. Well, I hope that's where we're heading.
I would say you hope that's where we're heading, because alternative. I mean, I think my concern is that the U.S. it doesn't. In chess, it's always like there's an acronym. Well, it's not acronym, but it's a common knowledge that if you're a drawing position where you try to win it, you lose it. If it is a draw, then it is a draw. Then it is a draw. You're pushing hard in order to try to make the draw into a win. You often lose it. The U.S. doesn't seem to acknowledge that that is the world that we're living in. And so you get Donald Trump, who seems to be this kind of last gasp And I do think it's decline. I mean, how do you get a president that's incompetent? Or for that matter, Joe Biden, same thing. I mean, it's not like these guys have been brilliant people who are involved in statecraft. They've gotten to the point of just trying to scream at the world, which is what Donald Trump is, screaming at the world, dishonest, all of that stuff.
Look, they're symptoms, right? They're really symptoms of a deep sense of displacement anxiety, and I think a sense of grief as well. You know, there was a time when, you know, America was the unquestioned primate, but that no longer exists. That era is over, and so there's a grief involved because that's lost. And unsurprisingly, when you're experiencing displacement anxiety, when you're going through grief, you're very angry, and the risk we run is, of course, the consequences of an America lashing out, trying to reclaim its lost mantle. That's the risk. And, you know, that's why I say I hope that the process leads to a relatively ordered decentering. I say relatively ordered because I don't think that this is going to be smooth at all. You know, clearly it's not. It's just a question of how rough it gets. And you know, here in Asia, we're going to be in many ways at the epicenter of it because, to some extent, this question of Taiwan and America's power projection in the Western Pacific, which it has dominated for 75 years, is in some regards going to be the last stand. And how America's retrenchment from the region can be effected without a sense of grotesque national humiliation, I think is going to be an important challenge, not so much for America, but actually for the rest of the world, because America is going to get pushed out of this region over the next 10 to 20 years. It's just going to be a question of how it is pushed out of the region and how people view it being pushed out of the region. And provided that this change of circumstance in the region is not at least explicitly construed as an American humiliation, but that in fact this is an evolution that leads to, you know, a good outcome all round, then we might land a little bit softer than we might otherwise.
I guess I bristle at this idea of, yes, I understand the humiliation part. I understand of the loss part, but this is kind of like a Crimea River thing. The United States had all of these resources, all of the things that it could have done with its resources. And instead, we pissed away $10 trillion murdering and killing people in Iraq and deciding to reshape the Middle East. We're doing the same thing with Taiwan, where we're trying to start a war with China because, you know, hashtag we're America, we're primacy, and we can tell people what to do. Yeah, this is a Crimea River thing. I feel you. I agree with everything you're saying.
Don't get me started. In a sense, when I articulate this particular approach, it doesn't necessarily always reflect sometimes how I feel, but because, you know, in many ways, you know, Crimea River, you can be very angry on behalf of people, but at the same time, I keep reminding myself, are we just trying to, in a sense, settle a score? Because that is a very natural reaction, right? Or are we just trying to get to the next phase as unscathed as we all can? And that, in a sense, I get why the instinct is the first. Trust me. But I guess I hope that whilst we can understand why that is the instinct for many people, you'll notice that across the global south, most people don't talk like that or think like that. But you can be absolutely certain, as I'm sure you know, that people across the global south have not forgotten, and in fact probably have never forgiven either. But they put that to one side and focus on the betterment of their own lives and the betterment of their own communities, because that's a better place to commit energy and effort.
I was born and raised here. It's my bones. That's kind of what it is. And by the way, I'm not talking about settling scores. It's just this idea of, yeah, and I guess I use the war. I was saying that in the context of you had all of this money, you have all of these resources,
Blew
you had a
it.
primacy position, and you
Blew
didn't
it.
use it like China. You know, you decided to use it in the sense of, hey, I need to pay my oligarchs more. I give you an example, the Big Beautiful Bill. They're cutting, as you pointed out, infant mortality rates. We die, 5 years younger than Europeans, and yet they're taking nearly $1 trillion out of Social Security. I'm sorry, out of Medicaid.
Yep.
We barely have a healthcare system in the context of people's ability to pay for this stuff. SNAP benefits, again, taking massive amounts of money. I think it's the largest pool of money from SNAP benefits, which is feeding children. And they're using that money to give oligarchs more money. And I'm saying this is what this country is. And so the idea that where you've had a declining society as a direct result of the policy choices that you've made, and then you turn around and say, it's the world's fault. And so we're going to lash out at the world. Yeah, that's a bit rich.
Yeah, look, as people who followed me on Twitter will often see me talk about America needing to own its own problems, right? And blaming other people for its own problems isn't going to help it. And this is precisely what you're describing.
Yeah.
But these are systemic things too, right? So over the course of the last 50, 60 years, American financialization has been central to the way its political economy has been organized. And unsurprisingly, it's coincided with the destruction of industries and the destruction of the kinds of jobs that those industries brought. It wasn't because China came and stole those jobs, or before China, somebody else, right? So this has been going on for 45, 50 years. And whilst change is kind of inevitable, the question you ask yourself is, as places change and as old industries die or old jobs disappear because of new technologies or whatever, what is being done to ensure that the displaced people aren't left behind? Right. And some places do a much better job of making sure that there isn't a left behind mess that essentially accumulates for 3 generations, but does something constructive to ensure that people who are displaced as a result of structural change can find something else meaningful to do. The United States simply has not done that. It has gone through significant structural change. That's one of the reasons why we have the politics today that we do. But that structural change was never accompanied by the kinds of public policy interventions that was needed to make sure that the place didn't begin to fall apart. Right. I mean, I spent time driving through the Appalachians, for example, and that is a classic example of communities that in effect were abandoned, right? As industries shut down, the state government turned its back on them. And unsurprisingly, 2 generations later, you've got a bunch of really angry people who feel that the promises of the American dream have actually just become a forever nightmare. And this is where we're at, right? So it is a country that if you were given a choice of a place with the resources around the world to choose to go to, the North American continent would have to be the most abundant, fertile, safe, prosperous opportunity land that there could ever have been on the face of this earth. The rivers that run through it, the rich soils that there are, it is one of the most amazing, fertile parts of this earth. And yet, what have we got? You know, we've got people who 13% who don't have enough food. 13%. Right? That's remarkable. But does this lead in the end? And this is really my question to my American friends is, you know, does this lead in the end to substantial structural change in the political economy, or doesn't it? And I guess, you know, we're all sitting here watching and waiting to see how American citizens respond. Now, we've seen one response already with the election of President Trump. It was a response, right?
Yeah.
But will there be a response to the response, often from the same people? Right? So this isn't, the blue guys coming back. This is the same people being doubly angry that what they thought was going to happen never did, and they feel even more let down than they've ever felt before.
Mhm.
Will that trigger, the kinds of significant structural changes that I suspect are called for? I don't know.
Warwick Powell, thank you for this. I really appreciate this conversation. I really do. Warwick Powell, he's an adjunct professor at Queensland University, professor working in the intersection of China, digital technologies, supply chains, financial flows, and global political economy and governance. I really, really appreciated this. I hope you're willing to come back. Thank you for this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a great conversation. Thanks, Jamal, and thanks for the work that you do.
Oh man, thank you. Be safe. Thank you. All right. I would like to go to my next guest. I see him in the background. I'm joined by my man, Dimitri Lascaris. Dimitri Lascaris is a lawyer, journalist, activist for Montreal, Quebec in 2020. Dimitri ran for the Green Party leadership. I just said that, ran for the Green Party leadership in 2020. He is host of Reason to Resist. Check him out. In fact, part of the reason to bring you on. Well, I bring you on anytime you want to come on, and I always send out invites. But you had a really good show. You went over Lath's situation, basically the details of what happened to him. You did some investigative work. And the other one had to do with, what is the question? You made the point of saying Zionism is toast. You were talking to Vijay Prasad. And the basic argument was, like, you've beat this into the ground to such a degree. How do you recover this ideology? And that is a fantastic question. It's kind of like Nazism, right? Like, you can't even name yourself Hitler in Austria right now. Like, it's been so tarnished and damaged. And my ex is Austrian. And, one of the things I think we've had this conversation about, where she talks about the next generation after, or the generation after that, where they come to reconcile, like, whoa, this is what you did? And there's a question about whether or not that is what's going to have to deal with, that's assuming Israel continue to exist. But Israelis, Jews, etc., later of, is this really what we did? Now, the first Nakba, it did not happen. It didn't happen. But if you go around and effectively commit a genocide in real terms, it does it. I'm sorry. I need to bring. I'm sorry. How are you doing, Dimitri? You doing okay today?
Well, considering all the horrors that you've just described, I'm doing okay. But
yeah, that's pretty heavy invite. I'm sorry. I had the stuff in my head before you came on, because, like I said, when I saw your shows, I was like, wow, these are damn good shows. And again, Reason to Resist. Check Dimitri out. Yeah, and so I wanted to step into it. Let's start with Lath first. Apparently, I just got a text from Lath maybe an hour ago where he said he's back on the horse. And so he's going to, I guess, start doing interviews again. But you were able to do, I don't know if you personally did it, but either way, there was investigative research where you were able to figure out what actually happened. When I spoke to him, when he first got out, he kind of made the point of saying physically he's okay, mentally, he's okay. So I'm assuming that's pretty conspicuous of saying physically my body is okay. What went on in this? Because this comes across as being a political issue.
So he, and just bear in mind as I describe what happened, and as I said in my report, I've crossed into South Lebanon, and the dividing line, by the way, between Lebanon, South Lebanon, is generally acknowledged to be a river called the Litani River, Litni, which runs more or less roughly parallel to the border between Lebanon and what I call occupied Palestine, or what Zionists call Israel. So, and it's not too far from the border. I believe it's like a band of territory that's maybe 20, 25 kilometers wide, and this is very much Hezbollah country. Okay, there are others there, Maronite Christians, there are Sunnis and others, but it is really dominated by the Shia Muslim community and people who are pro-Hezbollah. So this is an area during the last 22 months of horror that I've crossed into on maybe 10 to 15 occasions. And every single time I was accompanied by either Laith or his producer, Hadi Hotait, a Lebanese journalist. Usually it was both of them. So all three of us were driving in Hadi's SUV. So I've done this many times, and I've never had the experience that Laith had. There have been a couple of occasions where you have to go through, usually Lebanese army checkpoints. There are also some checkpoints that are operated by UNIFIL, the so-called peacekeeping force of the United Nations. But, it's customary to go through a Lebanese army checkpoint in order to get into South Lebanon. And there have been times where I was with them or I was with just Hadi, and we were stopped and, we were questioned and they turned us back. So you can't go in. And then we had to be, find alternatives or just go back to Beirut. But it's never gone beyond that,
Which is rational, by the way. Just to interrupt real quick.
Sure.
Like if you went to an airport and they say, do you have a passport? And you say no, they don't lock you up. They tell you to leave. Right.
Yeah. Now, and I'm not a Lebanese citizen, nor do I reside in Lebanon, right? I'm not a citizen of. I'm not Arabic, so I'm about as strange to this place as anybody can be. Whereas Laith actually resides in Lebanon. He's been there for years. Hadi is a Lebanese citizen. Laith is not a Lebanese citizen. He technically is a Syrian and a Canadian citizen, but he's well known, I imagine, to the authorities. His media outlet, of which he is executive director, Free Palestine TV, has done, God, they must have done certainly dozens, if not hundreds, of reports from South Lebanon.
Right.
It's hard to believe that Lebanese military intelligence didn't already know who Laith is when all of this happened. So this is the background, okay? So he goes down there with Hadi, makes another trip, and they're heading to a village, I believe it was called Mashal Sab, something like that, which is about a kilometer and a half from the border with occupied Palestine. And it, like so many villages in the border area, has been completely demolished by Israel. I'm talking flattened, okay? I've seen this over and over again when I was down there. And they actually they get through the Lebanese army checkpoint without even being stopped. Sometimes they just wave you through, right? They don't even ask you anything. So on this occasion, that happened. They just went through and nobody tried to stop them. Nobody questioned them. And then they get beyond the checkpoint and they are on the outskirts of this village that they wanted to see. And all of a sudden, more than 10 men on scooters surround their SUV and block them from moving. So they get out and they're told to wait. And as they're waiting, one of the men on the scooters calls a municipal police officer who shows up. And when he gets there, the municipal police officer, there's some brief questioning, and then he advises Laith and Hadi that they're going to have to be interrogated by military intelligence, not by sort of ordinary Lebanese army soldiers, but by military intelligence. So, and apparently, the municipal police officer, before they were taken away, had conversations with people who are associated with the resistance and who said, these guys are okay. Okay. Like, no need to be worried about them. And he just said, I don't care. I don't care what you say. They're going to be interrogated by military intelligence. So they both get taken to the local military intelligence office, which is in a place called Tibnin, Tibnin. And along the way, Laith is placed in handcuffs by the military intelligence officer. Hadi is not. Mm-hmm. And when they get there, they are interrogated separately. It's not a particularly eventful interrogation. I wouldn't say anything troubling happened. And it appeared that everything was going to be fine and they were going to be released. And They actually were told to go stand outside while some paperwork was done, and they were standing at the exit, and they were having a cigarette. And as they were waiting, to their surprise, they're told, no, you actually aren't going to be released. Hadi can go, but Laith can't. So Laith is then taken to the military intelligence headquarters in Lebanon's third largest city, which is called Sidon. It's on the coast of the Mediterranean coast of Lebanon. And there he is interrogated again. Hadi, at that point, I think he tried to wait, but he was told, you can't wait. You need to go. And so Laith is now on his own. And Hadi loses contact with him. From that point on, so this was Sunday. What is it today? It's was it Wednesday? I think. So 2 Sundays.
Yeah.
Right? So so now late Sunday evening, I believe it was, Hadi loses contact with him. Laith is then unknown to Hadi, is being interrogated in Sidon. When that is finished, he is put in a cell and held overnight. And then the following day, he is transported to the military intelligence headquarters in Beirut.
Are you serious?
And they put him in the back of a hatch of, I think it was a largest vehicle, blindfolded and handcuffed. Now, just imagine, you know, in a place like Lebanon.
Are you serious?
He's blindfolded and handcuffed. He doesn't know where he's going. So this is going to be for a third round of interrogation. And he gets to the military intelligence headquarters in Beirut. He is told to shower. He is forced to undergo a cold shower. He's then allowed to put his underwear back on, and he's still wet. And he is put in a room, a very cold room, intentionally cold, it appeared. And he's dripping wet, and he's blindfolded in his underwear, and he's made to stand up. And in that condition, he's interrogated. And
It's outrageous. Are you serious?
This is my best information about what happened, and I think it's reliable. So
that is outrageous.
The first thing out of the interrogator's mouth essentially is, what sect are you? So he wanted to know if he was Maronite, Shia, Muslim, Sunni Muslim, and Laith said, I'm Muslim. I've spoken to Laith about this, by the way, so I know what his views about this are. Yeah. And the guy says, guy gets angry with him and says, what do you mean you're Muslim? I want to know your sect. I didn't ask you what your religious faith is. What's your sect? And he says, he gave some kind of, complex answer, because he does come from he has both strains, Shia and Sunni, in his background. And he says, look, I'm Muslim. That's all I am. And the guy becomes very irate, begins to question him aggressively about, I didn't mention that his cell phone, his computer devices have been taken away. Right. They've now searched them. And he starts getting asked aggressively about contacts. And one in particular that got the attention of this interrogator was Laith, from many years ago, had contacted Gideon Levy, the world famous, Gideon Levy apparently was in Montreal 20 some odd years ago when Laith was an activist there. Yeah. And he gave a speech, and Laith basically took him for a tour. Never spoke to him again, but he just happened to have Gideon Levy's name and phone number in his phone. And the guy says, this is an Israeli? Laith says, yeah. Because I recognize this name is Israeli. He goes, so who is this man? And Laith says he works for the liberal newspaper Haaretz, and he's very, very critical of the Israeli government. I met him years ago. So the guy didn't know apparently who Gideon Levy was. And this is military intelligence.
He didn't know Israeli. It's like this guy's Israeli.
Yeah. So this goes on for several hours. Laith is then placed in a cell with 5 or 6 other guys, and they're given up until that point in time, Laith had not eaten anything. So now that we're talking
2 days.
2 days, this is the Tuesday hour we're talking on, and they come in and they give these 6 or 7 guys in the cell a single bowl of rice with mushrooms.
Oh,
and,
you can't be serious.
And they're told one guy in there had a plastic bag, which apparently you're not supposed to have, and he pulls it out. And the reason why he had the plastic bag was he used it to divide up the food every time they served food. So they throw the rice and the mushrooms into a plastic bag and they divide it up. And my understanding is Leif basically didn't eat anything. He had a few nibbles at that moment. It was the first time he ate. And then in the evening, I forgot to mention that, the following day. So now we're into the following day. Let me just do my math here. So Sunday night, he's in Sidon. Then he spends the night at military intelligence. So Wednesday or Tuesday, the third day, in the morning, he's told, you can now have a phone call. At that point in time, he'd not been given the opportunity to call anybody, not a lawyer, not his family. So his family, so it wasn't just Hadi. Nobody knew where Leith was.
Right.
And again, we're talking about Lebanon, a country at war with a very, difficult past. This is not the kind of experience you want to go through in a place like Lebanon, to be, to disappear in the custody of military intelligence for a couple of days. So he said you can have a phone call, and you go one call, and the guy, the military intelligence officer, who do you want to call? And they says, well, I want to call my doorman. And the guy says, you want to call your doorman? He says, listen, my wife and my kids are in Canada, and we got cats, and they haven't eaten in 2 days. Someone's got to go in there and feed my cats. So the guy says, you want to call your doorman to feed your cats? He goes, yes, we care a lot about our cats. So he calls the doorman, authorizes him to go into the apartment and feed the cats. And then he learns that he's going to get a visit from the Consul General of the Canadian Embassy.
Oh.
Now on that day, around the time that he's given a call, he's allowed to make this call, I published my interview of Hadi Hotate, his producer. And Hadi tells me in the interview everything he knows.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but Hadi has also gone to the, on the X account of Free Palestine TV and has announced what has happened, that Leith has disappeared.
By the way, I had him here too. I did an interview with him here.
So your audience may be familiar with this part already, so I won't repeat that. But the point here is that both Hadi's efforts on X and his interview with me, and I think, didn't he also speak with you before Leith was released? There was another interview, I think. Yeah. Right. Okay.
It was the day before Leith was released. I had Hadi here and basically asked people, contact Canada, contact Lebanon, etc.
Right. So we did the same thing. Of course, Hadi was doing this on X. And so I think the combination of all these things caused a lot of people to contact the Canadian Embassy. And so the Consul General shows up, and she doesn't appear to know who Leith is, right? And which is interesting for a reason I'll explain in a moment. But she says, look, this is an unusual case because we've received thousands of communications asking for us to ensure your release from the custody of military intelligence. And when she's meeting with Leith at the military intelligence headquarters, there's a military intelligence officer in the room listening. He refuses to leave them alone to speak. So he's listening to the whole conversation, right? And he hears this. He hears there are thousands of people who've contacted the embassy. I think she indicates, like that we haven't had anything like this happen before. Offers him, some alternative for legal counsel. He hasn't consulted with a lawyer apparently at that point in time, and in the course of that conversation, he reveals that the Consul General, she didn't know this, that she had met Leith's spouse, and the reason why she had met Leith's spouse is because Leith's spouse is the head of a department at a major Lebanese university, and she's a Canadian citizen. And the Canadian Embassy, not too long ago, had invited her over to the embassy as an honor because she apparently is in Lebanese academia the highest-ranking Canadian citizen, right? And so he mentions that this academic is his wife, and she now, wow, I didn't know that. And she's now even more concerned to ensure his release. The military intelligence officer is hearing this whole thing, and all of a sudden, he seemed to be communicating. All of a sudden, he announces, "Oh, you know, we're going to let you go today." So I think who knows, Jamal, what would have happened if the military intelligence officer had not overheard a conversation like this between Laith and the Consul General of Canada's embassy. On that note, essentially the Consul General is satisfied, leaves, but he's not immediately released. He's actually made to wait until late at night before they let him go, many hours after that. But he is released on that day. They take him to the military intelligence headquarters, is apparently on the outskirts of Beirut, on the highway between Beirut and Damascus, which I've been there many times. It's a crazy highway. You know, it's a huge amount of traffic and kind of dangerous place to drive. And they just dump him on the highway, basically, on the outskirts of Beirut. And his phone is given back to him in a condition that's inoperable. So he can't call anybody. He just basically starts walking in the direction of downtown Beirut, and somewhere along the way manages to find a way to contact. I believe it was Hadi. Somebody came to pick him up. And as you can imagine, this is pretty disturbing to Laith, you know. And I can understand completely why he is, he was reluctant to tell his story. But I've seen some reporting he's been doing since then, Jamal, and he doesn't seem to be discouraged in the slightest by what happened to him. He went to, I'm pretty sure this was after, it had to be after. I don't know if you've been talking
from the airport.
Yeah, George Abdallah,
yeah.
Right? The legendary Lebanese revolutionary who was released from a Parisian.
France after 40 years.
41 years.
Thank you. That's even worse.
He's like 74.
Yeah.
You know, and this man, I have to be honest with you, Jamal. I watched Laith's report. I'm surprised the Israelis didn't just blow that place sky high. It's like they could have done it. It would have been the easiest thing for them to do. These people are standing outside Beirut airport with a huge crowd, and George Abdallah is there basically calling on the Arab peoples to rise up against the autocracies who have effectively collaborated with Israel.
Yes.
And anybody, in my opinion, anybody having seen what I've seen in Lebanon, anybody who was at that event was basically taking his life into his own hands or her own hands, because it was the easiest thing. And this is like nothing for Israel. You know, they killed Nasrallah, they killed all of these other senior figures from Hezbollah. They have a lengthy, sordid history of massacring anybody who's perceived to be the leader of a resistance movement. And here's George Abdallah, a man whom they claim killed an Israeli diplomat in France. I think his name was Simantov, standing out in the open after having been released during the genocide, calling for Arabs to rise up. So, you know, I don't think it's hard to imagine Israel wiping out anybody who was.
Yeah.
Laith's there, you know, he's doing the report, and he's very, very, I think it's fair to say, pro Abdallah in his reporting. Doesn't seem to be deterred in the slightest. It's actually quite remarkable. I must say this,
to be honest.
You know him. You know him as well as anybody, and I mean, you've had him on your program many times. My understanding is, and so this is a man who's fearless. He's fearless, and
well, as I told him, he freaks me out big time. Because I've heard some of the reporting that Laith has done, and he's like went through some of the situations that he was in. Some of those things were like death-defying, like being shot at, nearly hit by Israel. I mean, and it's like, dude, you're freaking me out. I think I even told him that. I said, dude, you're freaking me out.
On one of our trips, we stayed in a house. Hadi had a cousin who owned a house right on the border. It was like a kilometer from the border. And we could see an Israeli military base on a hill right across. So they had a clear line of sight to us. And we spent 2 nights in that house. This was during the intense period of combat between Hezbollah last year. And, there were numerous explosions that took place during the time that we were there. And there was one airstrike that happened very close to us. It just freaked us out. Laith was actually doing an interview. It was one of the major alternative media programs while at the point where the airstrike took place. Oh, he was on the Garland Nixon show. I remember this. I was outside on the patio, and there's this airstrike, and it was almost like it happened. We didn't see, because we were on a hill, and we didn't see exactly where it hit, but it was so close that we thought something in our vicinity had been completely destroyed. And Lath, stood up right during the interview with Garland Nixon and said, "Gotta go." So
gotta cut this short.
So this is like a regular occurrence for him. So I was a bit, it's not so regular for me. I can tell you that was quite something.
Yeah, that would be bizarre. I mean, like, and I'm not making a comparison. Living in DC, gunshots will go off all the time. Just
Sure.
You just get used to gunshots, right? That's not a war zone, but you get desensitized to just violence in DC. And so I can't, like, these two things are not equal, but you can kind of see one to the other on how you can get, I would imagine, desensitized to the level of explosions or bombs or that stuff like that. Yeah.
There was one moment, it's very interesting when you say about desensitization. One experience I had was we were actually, I stopped with Hadi and Lath on the Litani River.
Mhm.
It was like a hot summer day, and we got out in a little place in the water. It was a really beautiful little place on the Litani River. We were drinking coffee, and there were kids playing everywhere, and there were adults. It was so hot, they were just waiting in the water and trying to cool off. There was the damn Israeli airstrike overhead nearby. A huge explosion. It actually turned out, I thought it was an airstrike at the time, but it turned out to be a sonic boom from an Israeli fighter jet. And when it went off, I was like, whoa. And all the kids just started laughing and raising their hands in the air, shouting defiance. Kids.
That sucks.
But the
Like,
desensitized
kids shouldn't have to grow up into that. I mean,
that's great.
that sucks. I mean, I know that's what Israel has been doing, right? And I know they've been killing kids and everything else, but I hate hearing stuff like that, even in schools. Like, because, in the States, school shooting, it's just kind of a fact of life. And you would get schools saying, hey, we need to put chains on our doors, or hey, we need to get the security guards, and we need to bring the police into schools. None of those are good outcomes. And meaning I understand why they would come to that. But the notion that kids have to grow up with a prison pipeline, or kids have to grow up with chains on their doors. I remember they did it in my school, where they start like bringing in a security guard. You could see the changeover that was taking place in the United States. I mean, cops are maniacs. I don't want them near my kids. And yet, school shooters, or the bulletproof book bags, another anomaly in America. Yeah, that sucks.
Cops are scary in the United States, man.
They are. They're lunatics. They're full-blown lunatics. And it's only going to get worse. I mean, I was having a conversation with Warwick. Warwick was pointing this out, where he was making the point of saying, what Donald Trump is doing is going to effectively impoverish Americans that much more. And this is on top of, and he was going through the stats of, X number food insecure, X number living paycheck. I think it was like 60, 70% living paycheck to paycheck. And, you go into X number die younger than in Europe or modern economies. And then you're taking money out of healthcare, like $700 billion. You're taking money out of SNAP programs. Like, meaning, what does this do to society when you are this over the top in your objective and trying to feed more rich people money, as opposed to pulling that money out of the hands of poor people who already don't have enough as is? He was like, it's chaos. Like, you're effectively creating society of potential revolutionaries. And how does the state react to that? Well, the state becomes more tyrannical, typically, in order to put down what their policies have created. So,
100%.
yeah, Europeans and Canadians, I don't think Europe and Canada is anywhere near that. And many of the people that I met, they're like, yeah, man, I don't want to come to the States. Especially if they're like Europeans, or if they're in Canada, they're like, yeah, screw that. You guys are lunatics.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for that breakdown, man. That is a fantastic breakdown. That is damn good reporting. Oh man, it sucks. Like I told Lath, I was like, dude, being in a gray area of the law is not good. Like, where you've been disappeared effectively, where they don't know where you are. They don't know what is happening to you. And it's not even the police, it's military intelligence. So it's like, what is the point of a lawyer when you're dealing with military intelligence? Like if the CIA had dragged you to a black site and you say, I want my lawyer, they're gonna laugh. They're gonna laugh at you. A lawyer, really? Is that what you want, huh? You also want a Big Mac. Like, well, you know, like nobody's gonna accept that, right? Like, but that is effectively what is taking place. This is like military intelligence. This wasn't even the police, where you have a legal system and a legal code and everything. Oh.
I think the reason why, I don't know this for sure, but I think the reason why he was given a call was because the Canadian consul was coming over, right? Like, not only was he released because of this interaction that he had with the consul in front of the military intelligence officer, but that was also the reason why he was given a call. He might not have even been given a call if it wasn't for her intervention.
What do you think this was about? Do you think this was purely a political persecution? Do you think this was, you're in the wrong place? Do you think, like, I mean, I guess when I talk to Laith, I suppose I can get his assessment on it. But where do you think this falls?
Well, I have to be careful what I say here because I have some information that I can't share about what happened. So
fair enough. Talk about it. Yeah, talk about it.
I'll say this: there are several possibilities. One is that somebody with power and influence in Lebanon has a private grudge. Another is that the Israelis are behind this, and they found people who are either aligned with them or who can be corrupted inside military intelligence.
Yes,
right. And the third is this is somehow sectarian, and that there are factions. There's a faction within Lebanon that is particularly hostile. There might be more than one that's particularly hostile to Laith. So at this stage, Laith may know more about that than I do. Entirely possible, but it's unclear exactly why this happened. But I just can't believe for 1 second, because of how long Laith has been in Lebanon and how extensively this guy's he's an open book, man. He once did an interview I watched where he was calling on the people of Saudi Arabia to overthrow the crown prince by violence. Okay. I spoke to him after that. I said, dude, you are playing with fire, man. You are in Lebanon. Okay. And the Saudis have, extensive contacts and influence in Lebanon. You think they'd hesitate to take you out? You are openly calling for the violent overthrow of the Saudi autocracy. So Laith has got a lot of enemies, bottom line, powerful enemies. So hard to say exactly who's behind this, but there's no way that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please. I'm sorry.
There's no way that I just can't believe that anybody thought he was a spy for Israel. I mean, come on.
Yeah, he doesn't have the ball. Like I've had interviews with him where I'm like, whoa, that's hardcore. I mean, now mind you, he's in Lebanon, right? And if you are seeing people get killed, you're seeing people get murdered, you're seeing the destruction of your place. So I understand why he takes that point of view, right? But Jesus, like he is not like, I'm just going to say this in private. I'm going to be on air calling for this stuff, which you got to respect him.
Yeah.
Got to respect him for it.
Last year, the Israeli government put out a report. I think I might have mentioned this on a recent program with you, Jamal. They put out a report. I don't think they've done this before. I haven't seen this before. They put out a report purporting to identify the 5 worst anti-Semites in Canada. Leave it that.
Oh, wait, say it again.
The 5 worst anti-Semites, Israeli government. And so I read the report. I thought they might put me on that damn thing because of, how critical I've been. Laith and I are quite possibly the 2 most outspoken critics of Zionism in Canada. Yeah. Okay. But Laith has been particular. I don't get nearly as difficult a time as Laith, in my view, because Laith is Arab, whereas I'm of European origin. I think that's a big reason why he's gotten more heat than I have. So he's in this report along with the Samidoun Prisoner Network, the Palestinian Solidarity Prisoner Network, which has never been accused of engaging in violence. So they put them in this report. They put the executive director, a woman by the name of Charlotte Cates, in this report, who's an outspoken defender of the Palestinian cause. They put a woman by the name of Sarah Jama, who is a Somali Canadian who is in the Ontario legislature. And she had been, a member of the legislature for a nominally social democratic party. And she was criticizing, a couple of years ago, she was vehemently criticizing Israel's treatment of Palestinians. And she got expelled from her own party and wasn't allowed to speak. They barred her from speaking in the Ontario legislature. And one day she came in there with a keffiyeh after all of this happened, and she was told to get out. Okay, so Sarah Jam is a person of conscience, extraordinary moral courage. She's in this report. And then they throw in some guy I never heard of before who I did some research, and he might actually be a real anti-Semite, this guy. Nothing to do with Palestine. Yeah, just a good measure. So they didn't want everybody to be a defender of the Palestinian cause. So they try to make this look like a legitimate kind of assessment of who the worst anti-Semites are. So the point of the story is the Israeli government knows who Laith is, and they hate his guts. They absolutely hate his guts. And that was like, before much of the reporting he has done during the genocide had taken place. So you can imagine how much hostility they have towards him now. I'm surprised they haven't killed Laith by drone strike. They could easily have done that. And Hadi as well.
It's not like Lebanon would do anything about it.
Nope, nothing.
Not like the Lebanese military would do anything about it. I mean, like Hadi said on the show, he was like, you have animals backed by Jelani coming from one side. You have the Israeli military murdering people on the other, and you go after Laith. I was like, yeah, right. I mean, it's not like they fire a shot in anger at Israel. So there's that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. The other one I want to get to, and there was something else. It was VJ, but it was something else.
Zionism?
I know. This. So there's a Substack article by Alistair Crook. And the name of the article, I thought it was particularly good, even though it was infuriating for me to read it. And I'll tell you why as I show it. It's called Last Phase Before Genocide, the Jewish State is Erecting a Ghetto. What a horrifying sentence. That's the name of the title. Last phase before genocide, the Jewish state is erecting a ghetto. What a horrifying sentence. Now, my rage at this article is part of the title. For one, they've been committing a genocide, and they've been committing a genocide for a very long time. Two, I get he's looking for impact, which I accept. But I think what annoys me is that they have been doing this. It's been clear that they've been committing a genocide. It's been clear the direction that they were going. And he makes the point in the article that genocide is not a singular process. Yes, agreed. That it's a buildup. And it's almost like you are creating a context that would allow you to even commit the genocide before you get to the final thing. And he points out that the point where you create concentration camps, well, you're in the last phase of it. Because it's easy to go from a concentration camp and say, hey, is there a difference between murdering them with bombs in mass where we're killing hundreds a day to make this process a bit better? Like, just death camps at that point. And he's making the point of saying, like, this is often the last phase of it. He went through the Armenian genocide, the Nazi genocide, and now we're with the Israeli genocide. Mm-hmm. I accept that. I'm deeply annoyed by people, Johnny-come-latelys, governments who come lately, who I don't believe them, by the way. I think those governments are fully on board for this. I think they're perfectly okay with this. And I think they've been okay with it all the way through. And now that they're seeing their public opinion changing, it's like, hey, we don't like seeing skeletal babies die, right? That's impolite to our European sensibilities. We don't like that. So let's put out a mealy-mouthed word statement saying that we don't like this. It's like, okay, dude, right? Like, put this in context. I mean, this shit is aggravating. So it looks like the fifth chamber of hell. But this is what people are living through to try to get through. That's insane. And you're talking about people who are walking mouths for this. I want to show another case of one of the soldiers that was there that came back and gave testimony because it bothered him so much. Guy's Green Beret. And he comes back and he's like, dude, they are just murdering kids. And there's one particular story that got him because he talked to the kid. The kid apparently told him, thank you so much for the food. And it was like rice that he found on the ground or something and lentils. And Israel turns around and just opens fire, murdering the child.
Secure distribution site number 2. The aid had been distributed. A lot of people had left. You see behind there's a crowd of people still with their boxes, kind of getting ready to leave. And this little boy, his name is Amir, and he was standing, you know, he was with the crowd, but he walks over, and you see that first picture on the top right. He kind of walks over to me, and he puts out his hand. And at first I thought like that he wanted more food or something, and I felt bad because I didn't have anything. But I was like, oh, I have nothing. And he puts out his hand, and so I beckoned him to come to me. I said, you know, come here. And he reaches out and he holds my hand, and he kisses my hand. Kisses me, he kisses my hand, and he says, Shukran. You can see in this picture that this little boy is not wearing shoes. His clothes are falling off of him because he's so skinny. I put my hand on his left shoulder, and I looked at him, and he's looking at me. We're looking at each other in the eyes, and I say to him, people care. You're a human being, and people care about you. The world cares. That's not Hamas. That's not a Hamas fighter. And I looked at him and I said, the world cares. And he put down the little food he has. You notice he doesn't have a box. He doesn't have a box of food. He has half of a bag of rice that he found on the ground, a broken bag, half a bag of lentils that he found on the ground. And he was thanking us. Thank you. This little boy, from where he came from, walked 12 kilometers to get there, just to get there. 12 kilometers. Look at this boy. And when he got there, he thanked us for the remnants and the small crumbs that he got. And he sets them down on the ground because I was kneeling at this point, and he sets his food down.
Long story short, I'm not going to play the entirety of it because, I mean, it's grim. But effectively, when the kid goes to walk back to follow the crowd, Israel opens fire on the crowd with shot grenades, pepper spray, guns, bullets, etc. And when the dust settled, that kid was dead. That's the thing that got him to come out and say, this is effing outrageous. In which case he came out and made that testimony. That kid is not special. That has been happening day after day after day, going back for the last 2 years.
This man, isn't he a former Green Beret?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
People should understand that.
Yeah. So he is, like he's trying to, I guess what I'm trying to present is that Alex Crawley, I'm sorry, I keep calling the man Crawley, Alistair Crook, thank you.
Right.
He's hitting upon something where he is trying to show impact. I mean, this video will be monetized, but I wanted to name it in the way that I did because I wanted to kind of get across Jewish state is building concentration camps because that should have impact. And yet, I don't get this. Do you buy the European leaders really care about this? From my point of view, I don't think they care at all.
Oh, they only care about themselves, Jamal. Those people, they don't give a damn about the Palestinian people. They only care about themselves. But the thing is that there's so much anger out there right now that they're worried about themselves. That's how bad the anger is getting. I might have been on this program. I had a conversation on some platform. I was interviewed a few months ago. And after they began the, brazen outright starvation of the Palestinian people, I think this was back in March, early March.
It was here. I know where you're going. It was here. Please continue.
And I said, wait till people start dropping like flies. You see people, emaciated, skeletal people and children dying of starvation. Something's going to break. And something's broken. And as you may have already reported on your program, I'm sure you're aware of it, just 1 or 2 days ago, 2 Israeli human rights organizations, B'Tselem and Physicians for Human Rights Israel, came out and said that Israel is committing genocide. And Ali Abunimah, the chief editor of Electronic Intifada,
right,
has done just absolutely outstanding reporting on this genocide, came out and said today on X, where have these 2 human rights organizations been? It's been obvious since October 2023 that Israel has embarked upon a genocidal campaign in Gaza. Well, what finally pushed them over the edge, in a way I can kind of understand because they're operating in a very dangerous environment, but still, they're not likely to be put to death for expressing their views. B'Tselem, in 2017 said Israel is an apartheid state. They managed to survive that. So how much were they at risk really? Why did they wait so long? In any case, they'll have to answer that question one day. Hopefully they will. But the point here is this was a bridge too far. It forced them, even operating in that extremely oppressive environment, to accuse their own government of genocide. These are images that Israel will not recover from. These are images that are going to break a lot of souls in the West. And I think the European leadership is really concerned right now about revolution. Really concerned.
You
and
think
they
so?
should. Yes.
Europe.
Yes. There's already massive discontent in Europe, Jamaro. Okay. You're talking about huge amounts of anger out there because the country, they're squashing democracy. They've, ever since the financial crisis, they've completely eviscerated democracy in Europe. They are now canceling elections when they don't like the outcome. Like in Romania, wherever, they're imposing austerity on the population. The cost of energy and therefore of living is going up dramatically for a failed proxy war in Ukraine. A lot more and more people here can see that they have cynically used the Ukrainian people and created this festering wound in the heart of Europe that is never going to be healed in our lifetimes. Why? Not because they give a damn about human rights. If they thought anything about human rights, would they be giving arms to Israel? Are you kidding me? Nobody believes that crap anymore. They're doing it because of imperialism. They're doing it because, and not because they want to empower and enrich the peoples of Europe, but imperialism empowers and enriches the elites. And for this, the Europeans are paying a very heavy price. So they're already on thin ice. You look at the approval ratings of people like Starmer, and Macron and Ursula von der Leyen. She's got to be one of the most despised people in all of Europe, and she's amongst the most powerful politicians on the continent. So they're operating already in a very, very volatile environment. This could be, remember, you don't need to have 50% of the people rise up in order for a revolution to happen.
Right.
You can do it with less than 5% of the population, man. So I think they're very concerned right now that something may break and they're not going to be able to control it. That's the only reason why I think it might be different. That's the reason. I don't think they give a damn about Palestinians.
Yeah, I don't think they do either. And from my point of view, this is just policy. Like, keep in mind, Joe Biden spent the entirety of his presidency screaming, we're doing everything in our power to free the hostages. We're trying to end the war. We're working tirelessly. And at the end of it all, you find out Joe Biden wasn't doing squat. In fact, the Israelis said, thank God that Joe Biden was president. God put Joe Biden in office in order to protect the state of Israel, because Joe Biden did not squat the entire time through. In fact, they said they were shocked that Joe Biden let them kill that many people, that they thought that the United States would get involved to stop them at a certain point, and the U.S. never did. So they just kept going. And so, when I look at Europe, I think the same thing. I was like, these are European colonists, and Europe is protecting their colony. And if they need to give mealy-mouthed lip service to, we don't like you doing this, we're going to recognize the state of Palestine as a two-state solution. It's like, shut up. Like, I don't buy that nonsense. What they know is they have the United States effectively back in their colony. So whatever they put out, Trump came out when France said it, Trump said France doesn't matter. They're irrelevant. He is right, by the way. France is irrelevant. And Europe has made itself irrelevant because they've gone along with this nonsense the entire way through. And as you pointed out for Canada, the way they got rid of their politician because she was wearing fake color off. Well, again, like, these are either European states or the very least vestiges of European states, the United States being one of them, protecting their colony in the Middle East for geopolitical reasons. And anything that they come out with and say, short of, and even sometimes when they say we're stopping the weapons, it's like, okay, dude, you're not even sending the weapons. You're not even doing it. It is very frustrating. That's all.
Ask yourself, why do they engage in this elaborate kabuki theater? Why have they spent so much time and energy trying to persuade people that they're trying to achieve a ceasefire and that they're so deeply concerned about the Palestinian people? Yeah, we see through it, but why do they invest all that energy? Because they do care about public opinion. People, they not because they are Democrats, but because they have to care about public opinion to save their own hides. You know, they have, in order to control the populace, they have to deceive them. And when people wake up, they are keenly aware of this. When people wake up and understand how the game is actually being played and how little they matter in the calculus of these psychopaths who rule us, this could easily result in a social explosion that they cannot control. So that's why they invest all that time and energy trying to propagandize the population. If they didn't care about public opinion, they wouldn't do that. They say, yeah, this is who we are. This is who we are, man. You know, we're colonizers, and we're not going to allow our colony to go down. And anybody who stands in the way, we're going to wipe them out. That's just who we are. No, they don't do that. They play this elaborate game designed to manipulate public opinion because they do care about being overthrown.
That's fair. I give you that. I give you that. Like you said, why would they spend that much time on mainstream media and everything else if indeed they didn't care about what's in your mind? And I forget who said it. They said the only thing they care about is what is in your mind. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because you had this piece where you pointed out Zionism. I think you said it's dead, or did you say toast? I think toast might have been my word.
Anyone would do. I said finished.
Okay, it's finished. Okay, I knew it was some adjective, right? But a lot of people don't buy that, and a lot of people don't believe it. I had one guy on my channel who was like, "Man, I don't buy this. I think this is nonsense." And obviously, part and parcel of the rationale for it is because you see them acting with impunity, murdering women, murdering dangerous babies, murdering, whoever they want, bombing countries, etc. Countries that give lip service to it, like Turkey, the humiliating Arab states that literally are effectively working in tandem with Israel. I mean, for God's sake, when the 12-Day War, as they call it, those states got involved to try to knock down Iranian missiles. We need to put that in context. And so you have populations in those states that are very angry, and yet the leadership of those states are perfectly fine with working with Israel as they murder women and children en masse. Let's put it in context, right? Mm-hmm. What are they missing when they say, yeah, dude, I don't see that. That's not what it looks like. It looks like they are going after Syria, going after Lebanon. They're in fact, to put this in context, this story came out. So I don't know if you've seen this, but they are, and what Crook, I was right the first time. What he was pointing to was that they were creating a ghetto that, for all intents and purposes, they've come up with a plan to steal or take Gaza. And the way they're doing it is making it smaller and smaller, and to the point where it's effectively a ghetto. And that's the idea that they're effectively going with. DD Geopolitics came out with it. For some reason, I got rid of that damn article. You have to take my word for it. I'll find the article. But I guess my point is that's where they were coming from that with. So when people look at this and says, well, America was able to commit genocide against the Native American population, then commit slavery 400 years later, nobody cares. Nobody acknowledges it. Turkey was able to commit genocide against the Armenian population. Nobody cares. Nobody says anything about it. Will Israel be the next one to be able to commit a genocide? And then 100 years later, nobody cares.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, let's just separate two issues. Okay, what I said was Zionism is finished. I was talking about the ideology,
political ideology, right?
Right. So, and its power to sway people, large numbers of people, its legitimacy, right? That is a separate thing from the question of whether the state of Israel can survive in its current form. The questions are related, but they're not the same question, right? Yeah. So the ideology could become completely delegitimized in the minds of the majority of people around the world and seen for what it is, which is a racist, genocidal ideology. But it takes some time for that to actually translate into the disappearance or collapse of the state of Israel. So these are not that they're related questions, but they're not the same question. So I believe that there was a General Assembly resolution, a UN General Assembly resolution I can't remember, it was decades ago, where they basically said they declared Zionism to be a racist ideology. And this became, Israel pushed back hard, the United States pushed back hard, other Western states to that resolution, and it ended up being withdrawn because, oh no, Zionism is about the sanctuary of the Jewish people and the homeland, the land without a people. They came away from Europe and found sanctuary here, and the desert bloomed and all the rest of that nonsense. And that view was successful. They actually succeeded in getting a lot of states from the global south to abandon the position they had taken that Zionism is a racist ideology. I don't think that battle is, I think they've squandered that victory. It's over for Zionism as a legitimate ideological view. The world understands overwhelmingly that it's not just a racist ideology, it's a genocidal ideology. It's genocidally racist. And there is no way that they're going to resurrect this as a legitimate ideology. I just don't believe that. In the minds of some people, it still obviously has a very, very powerful grip. No question about it. But the large majority of the human population, especially in the non-Western world, now sees Zionism for what it is, and they cannot unsee what they have seen. So that's what I meant by Zionism is finished. It's the ideology has been delegitimized, and it is never going to be legitimized again. Now, will this translate into the collapse of the state of Israel? Eventually, I believe it will, but that clearly has a ways to go, because they still are, imposing their will, not just on the Palestinians, on the Lebanese and the Syrians, in the most brutal manner imaginable, and still supported in every imaginable way by Western governments with their immense military power. But has the collapse begun of the state? Yeah, totally has begun. It's just going to take some time to play out. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you, is it going to be in 6 months? Could be. Is it going to be in a few years? Maybe. But will it happen in my lifetime, assuming that I live to be the life of an average Canadian, 80 years old? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm absolutely convinced of it. I cannot imagine that if I live to be that long, that the state of Israel in its current form will still exist. If it exists at all, it is going to be one state where people, at least nominally, maybe not in substance, as happened in South Africa. Okay, the apartheid regime collapsed, but you go there and there still has not been an equitable distribution of resources amongst the population. And the white elite has done a very effective job of preventing that from happening. But there is at least de jure, formally, equality in South Africa. Israel is either going to become that with its imperfections. Maybe it'll look like South Africa, okay, where the Palestinian population has formally an equal say, or even more than an equal say, but in actual, the economic reality for Palestinians is that they're still disadvantaged. It's going to either look like that, or what's going to happen is there's going to be a huge outflow of the Zionist Jewish population, which I believe has already begun, and Palestine is going to be resurrected from the ashes, and it's just going to be a Palestinian state. There will be some Jewish people there, but they're not going to be the dominant force in that society, within a few years' time. And as I say, I would not be surprised to see, the state of Israel collapse within the next year. That would not shock.
And by collapse, you mean just from the number of people that are effectively leaving, or
There's violence in the street. Ehud Olmert warned publicly, former Israeli prime minister, that he warned about a civil war. There are others who have very prominent Israelis who have talked about that possibility. So there could be that kind of a collapse where there's so much civil strife that the state just explodes into chaos. There could be a slow, departure or accelerating departure of the Zionist Jewish population. And eventually the number of Zionist Jews who remain are simply so small that they're not able to control any longer the Palestinians. That could happen. There could be a kind of economic collapse. There could be a precipitous withdrawal of the United States forces from the region, because the United States has, serious problems and could itself experience a collapse. And if the Americans pull out, it's all over for Israel.
Yeah, that's it.
They're toast. They're finished. Done. And I can easily imagine that happening within the next few years, because the United States, as you all well know, Jamal, wow, it's hanging by a thread, man. There could be a financial crisis. that could do in, the global power of the United States at any time.
I'll go further. There will be a financial crisis in the U.S. And look, I'm not an economic person, but you can look at indicators. And, if you are torching your population in regards to an economic sense, a population that's already poor, you're going into a recession. And those people are going to be poor while in that recession. So it's not like there's inflation, you have lower economic output. It's kind of the combination of that plus people are poor. I mean, even you can look at the dollar, for example, how it's lost value. I think it's like 10%, if not more, of value. Everything that you buy is now more expensive, not just because of inflation, but also because of the weakening of the dollar. Now, when Trump was in office first time around, or when Joe Biden was in office, Trump said, hey, that shows, how incompetent Joe Biden is. And then when he gets in office, he's like, this is great for business. I was like, okay, sure, bro, sure. We'll see. Look, I hope there's a reckoning. Honestly, God, I do. I swear to God, I do. I agree with you about Zionism as a political ideology. By the same token, you have true believers in the United States. You have the majority of the population of Israel still backs the state, or for that matter, still backs what they're doing to the Gazans, to Palestinians. Or for that matter,
I'm not sure. I mean, there was a poll that was done by Quinnipiac. I can never pronounce this. Quinnipiac University.
Quinnipiac, yeah.
Someday I go, where is that place, by the way? I never figured out where is Quinnipiac. But
I thought it was Pennsylvania, but I could be wrong.
Okay. So they do this poll in late May. They publish the results in early June. It shows that 60% of Democrats are more sympathetic they have more sympathy for Palestinians than Israelis. Only 12% have more sympathy for Israelis. And they show, so now it does show, this is before Epstein scandal blows up, okay? This is very important. And, Tucker Carlson coming out and Candace Owens coming out and saying, Epstein was Mossad. Epstein was Mossad. This is before this, okay? So all of these major Republican influencers, and it showed that even though a substantial majority of Republicans still had more sympathy for Israel, the number had dropped by 14 points from 2024. And the 2024 number for the Republicans was something like a 14% drop from the previous poll. So that's a very sharp decline. And the overall numbers, as I recall, was 37% of the total population, independents, Republicans, and Democrats, had more sympathy for, it's not a majority, it was 37%, much less than the majority. And the number who had more, percentage who had more was 34, as I recall. Okay, so they were almost at parity. And this was the lowest polling result for Israel in the history of this poll,
right,
which had been done for years. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is before Epstein. Now you've got Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and all these other influencers going, Trump betrayed you. He's concealing these wealthy, he's protecting these wealthy individuals, extremely wealthy individuals, and quite possibly himself from exposure by suppressing the Epstein files. And all of this was an Israeli intelligence operation. So what do you think has happened to public opinion amongst Republicans? I mean,
to be fair, I meant the political space. Like, I agree with you that the public itself, there's been a change. There's been a change. I mean, when you get Marjorie Taylor Greene out here effectively saying, how can, you back these people murdering babies and children? Tucker Carlson screaming, oh my God, they're bombing Christian churches. This is so evil. Like, you do see a change, societal wise, just like you see in Europe, where there's a societal change. Maybe not Austria, maybe not Germany, but in other countries that are sane people kind of that can see a baby get murdered and say, hey, I have feelings about the fact that the baby was murdered. Yeah, I agree. I do agree with you on that front. Dimitri, thank you for this. You have been fantastic. Great breakdown. Thank you for the conversation about Lath. Thank you for the conversation on this. One last question. Do you think they're going to really be able to create a death camp? Like, and I mean, in the sense of, we have a gate, we have people in that gate. We can now murder anybody who's outside of that gate. And let's be honest, we can murder anybody who's inside that gate also. Or we're going to kick these people out of the country and move them to somewhere else. Or do you think the ethnic cleansing thing of moving them somewhere is off the table?
Well, I just saw a report, just to be clear where things currently stand. I just saw a report in which an Israeli, I saw this on a Telegram resistance channel, talking about a senior Israeli military officer talking about that plan. And he said the plan had been tabled. It's been put on the shelf. We're not heading that direction. But maybe they will persist in pursuing that plan. So can they do it? I think they can. They can get a lot of the Palestinian population into a concentration camp, and they can kill a lot of them. But is this going to enable them to control Gaza? No, because there's hundreds of kilometers of tunnel networks, and the resistance is shown. Even Beit Hanun, which has been completely flattened and is probably the most vulnerable community in the entire Gaza Strip because of where it is situated. The Israelis keep trying to control it, and they keep getting killed.
Right.
Ambushes. So I don't see them solving that problem by putting a bunch of civilians into a concentration camp. That doesn't mean they're going to control Gaza. Can they kill a lot more people, Jamal? Oh, yeah, they can. Will they wipe out the Palestinian population? No, I don't think they're going to get away with it. I just don't think I don't think the world will allow it. I don't think the resistance will be defeated. I think Israel will collapse before that happens. But they could kill a lot more people.
From your mouth to God's ears, I am far more cynical about what the world would allow at this point. I mean,
Hard not to be. Yeah.
You were the one who said, in fact, you're the one on the show saying they are not going to allow skeletal kids to be walking around without them responding to that. You said these ghostly images are not going to, it's going to screw with them in a way that they're going to respond to it. And again, I agree with you in this case. I didn't believe you at the time. And I gotta be honest, I don't entirely think I believe you now, at least not in a real gut sense. I believe you in the sense of, okay, our audience or the members hate this. They don't like seeing these things. So we need to respond to the fact that the people don't like seeing these things. I agree. That I totally agree on. And we are seeing a response in that sense. So you're right.
Yeah.
You nailed it. Dimitri Lascaris, my man. You are always welcome, Dimitri Lascaris, lawyer, journalist, activist from Montreal, Quebec. In 2020, Dimitri ran for the leadership of the Green Party in Canada. He is host of Reason to Resist. You can check him out on his channel on YouTube. Dimitri, thank you for this, man. I really appreciate it. You be safe, okay?
Thank you. Thank you for the conversation. Take care.
Absolutely. All right. Always appreciate talking to Dimitri. He is school people. And, great sense of humor. He knows his stuff. He did fantastic reporting on the Lath issue. I think Lath is going to be back on the show on Friday. So, obviously, any kind of questions we need, we can hit him with those, considering he can answer. That is a terrifying experience. That is a terrifying ethnic experience. The idea that you live in a place for a very long time, you go to an area that you've been many a times, there's no police at the checkpoint, and then all of a sudden, obviously, they see you and they zero in on you. Look, I would tell you, in interrogations in the United States, they put people in freezing rooms on purpose. And oftentimes they want you to tell them that it's cold so they can bring you a blanket or something, even though the blanket is insufficient. They want you to do that because they want this relationship of, hey, you asked me for something, I give you something. See, isn't it nice that I gave you something? I'm not that bad of a guy. The entire thing is set up. It's crafted in order to extract the confession and to make you uncomfortable as they do the confession. So we want you to be freezing. We want you to be cold. We want you to break away and break down your will over the course of this particular interview, especially if they read you your rights. If they read you your rights, you're going to jail. Full stop. So tell them you want your lawyer. They will, if you say, hey, you read me my rights, am I going to jail? Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know. I just want to hear what you say. Nothing that you say is going to save you at all. I'm telling you, I've watched thousands of interrogations. I weirdly enough enjoy it. Nothing you say is going to save you until they read you your rights. The moment they read your rights, you're going to jail. Ask for your lawyer, shut up, let your lawyer do the talking for you. I've seen people talk themselves in the criminal convictions over and over and over again where the cop had nothing. And it was purely because, and by the way, I want those people to go to jail, right? Like, especially if they had nothing, or the person was guilty and they murdered or killed somebody. So fair enough. Thank you for your stupidity in this. But there have been plenty of cases where the cop had nothing at all, no video evidence, no nothing. They just had a sense. They caught the guy snooping around, but it wasn't necessarily enough to lock him up. Hell, it wasn't even enough to keep him. And because the guy knew that he was guilty, and he didn't want to give the perception that he was guilty, because he knew he was guilty, he talked to the cop. And their job is to extract confessions. And they do a damn good job of doing just that. Even confessions from people who are innocent at times. Or they would jump to conclusions and get somebody who is also innocent. But in the case of logic errors, oh, they're good. They're good. It's like, hey, let's walk through this story one more time. And because you get this impression that, hey, they're not pushing back on my story. No, because they want to nail your story down. Meaning the first story that you tell is a story that they're going to nail down, and they're going to say, all right, this is what he told us. Now let's step through it. And at the point where they step through it, it's just ratchets up. Person, they F it up. They do this stuff for a living. You are an amateur. They're professionals. Call your professional lawyer. That is not a situation that you want to be in. I'm telling you, if you are innocent, I am giving you damn good advice. They're not your buddies. They're not your friends. They are there in order to put you in a cage. And if they think in any way possible that you might have been, because again, they don't know it's a flat fact. They're just, looking, okay, we found this contradiction. We think this guy's hiding something. We think this guy thing. And it proceeds from there. That is not a position you want to be in. Even if they say bad things about you, even if they say, well, hey, man, we're just trying to clear this up so we can get you out of here. I understand that. I appreciate that. Would you like some water? Nope. Don't want anything. Don't want anything from you. Leave me to my devices, or let me call a lawyer. Okay, well, we can't let you call right now. Okay, let me know when I can call. But don't sit there and have the conversation. Just pointing it out. Look, I want to go into something. So Trump has decreased the amount of time. Where is it? Trump has decreased the amount of time for the quote unquote ultimatum, as we're calling it, against Russia. I am fascinated by this. And my fascination with this comes in line with this idea that Trump thinks anybody cares. That's the fascinating part. That he, honest to God, think Russia is responding or behaving in any way based upon a proven and devout liar. As I pointed out once before, there are a few things built into this. When Donald Trump first got into office, Russia might have been open, just like I was open. Hey, let's see what he does, right? I don't want to presume if I don't know as a flat fact. The president has been screaming about peace, screaming about ending wars, not starting wars. And he's been doing that for the last, 3 years. That was his whole political campaign. His base apparently supports him in this. Again, I think some of these people are cultists, so it doesn't really matter whether they support him or not. They'll flip on a dime. But I'm open. I'll see what he does. I give him the benefit of the doubt. Now, there were other people like Mark Sloboda who nailed it from the beginning. There is no way that an American president is going to give Russia what they want. They cannot succumb to that level. And I'm like, hey, Mark, hey, man, let's see what happens. I can always alter my point of view. And it's not that you even had a point of view. It's just I'm open to see what happens. Within 2 months, and Trump put out one of the dumbest plans. And I don't care what some of the guests who've come on the show say, one of the dumbest plans that was never going to be accepted by Russia. It's like, okay, this is nonsense. He's not being serious right now. And the notion of, hey, let's float putting European troops, calling them something else, into Ukraine. Let's put U.S. troops on the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. And people would come on the show and say, well, he wasn't really being serious about that. Dude, the things that he is floating is nonsense. Russia gave you their demands. You either accept it or you don't. Losers don't get to dictate terms. The notion that Putin says, hey, I'm open to a ceasefire, but you can't continue to put weapons, military, intelligence, and all of this stuff into Ukraine as we're doing a ceasefire. We've done Minsk 1 and 2. You are literally a proponent of this war, you're acting like you're a peacekeeper in the war. You are literally the main driver of this war. If you stop giving them money and weapons, the war would stop. Meaning if you walked, this stops. We know that. You're acting like we're stupid and we don't know that. So no, we're not dealing with you as if you're a negotiator. We're dealing with you. We may give you lip service to that fact, but we know that you're the main proponent of this war. You initiated, or at the very least provoked this war when the government was overthrown in 2014. Whether Trump knows that chapter and verse or not is secondary to the point that he is a US president with the United States being the main proponent of the war and the conflict. So there's that. And so you get him putting out a ludicrous plan and not accepting effectively what Russia has effectively put out for what they want. All right. So then Trump doesn't walk in the way that he said he was talking about walking. Taco Trump, Trump always chickens out, comes back around, feels pressured because Europe, Ukraine, the media screaming at him saying, hey, Putin is effectively eating your lunch. You see the Ukrainian military getting hammered, especially when the United States got pulled away into this conflict with Israel. Now, to focus in on that a little bit, Donald Trump is supposedly in negotiations with Iran. Donald Trump allows Israel to attack Iran in the middle of negotiations. And then the US turns around and attacks Iran. Okay. Now, I've said before, either Donald Trump is a flagrant liar or Donald Trump doesn't control his government. And I said that because I made the argument that Trump was running a shadow war under the actual war. This was when they were blowing up trains with civilians on it. This was when he went after the nuclear triad. And Trump acted as if he didn't know anything about it, despite the fact that it took him days to say anything about it. There's no way that I believe that Trump didn't know. And whether he knew or not, either you're not in control of your government, you're a flagrant liar. We've shown that both are probably true. So what is Russia to do with this? You know the man is a flagrant liar. You know he doesn't have control of the faculties of government in a sense. You don't even know if he's aware of how government is even operating. So how do you make a deal with somebody like that? You don't. All things being equal, you don't. Now, would they want to conceptually? Maybe, especially if you can end the war and end it in real terms. Maybe, especially if you can have security for your borders, the elimination at the very least, the expansion of NATO, like the things that they actually want, the elimination of the Ukrainian government at the way the government currently stands. Those are things that would be in your best interest because all things being equal, like anybody in any country, you want security. And so if that's what you can get, fair enough. Can you really get that out of an American president? I'm getting to the point of believing no. I mean, I think I agree with Mark on this. The protests is Europe rapping them on the knuckles, or the US rapping them on the knuckles. We had an anti-corruption organization that was basically an organization, a tool of control. Ukraine decided to make a power move to try to go after it, to solidify their control. And Europe says, hey, we don't like that. The US says, hey, we don't like that. And in which case, Europe pulls back billions of dollars that they were going to send to Ukraine. The government already starved of cash. And you get protests that just spring up out of nowhere, out the blue. We don't like that. Stop it. Now, how far they're willing to go with that, who knows? But clearly, it was not liked. I'm trying to make a basic point. How on earth, if you are Russia, do you accept the word of a man who is flagrantly dishonest and has showed himself to be flagrantly dishonest, and more to the point, is so erratic that you can't necessarily say this is what Trump says and this is what Trump believes and this is what the US policy is going to be? That is off the table. So from Russia's point of view, we're pursuing our objectives on the battlefield. It may get to the point where Ukraine weakens to the point where a deal may be had. It may get to the point where they're on the brink of collapse, in which case a deal may be had. But if not, we're pursuing our objectives on the battlefield. What the United States does, it does not affect our behavior. Yes, we will be cordial. No, we don't necessarily want to escalate in any real terms. But this notion of you threatening us in order to get us to stop what we are trying to accomplish. Nonsense. Dmitry Medvedev made the point of saying, because, you know, Donald Trump went from, we're going 50 days and we're going to knock this down to 12 days. Medvedev pointed something out that needs to be heeded because, again, I think Medvedev is the actual Russian position. It's not like there's a conflict in the Russian position. It's just emphaticness in which Medvedev says it contrasts Putin's more polite diplomatic touch. Trump's playing the ultimatum game with Russia, 50 days or 10. He should remember two things. One, Russia isn't Israel or even Iran. Two, each new ultimatum is a threat and a step towards war, not between Russia and Ukraine, but with his own country. Don't go down the Sleepy Joe road, meaning Joe Biden was continuously escalating and escalating and escalating. At some point, that escalation either had to come to loggerheads where it was going to crash into a wall where the U.S. had to back away, or you were going to have to escalate to the point of putting U.S. troops, which is ultimately, most likely, a world war. The question is Donald Trump, is that the road he's going down? They're going to ignore this ultimatum. They're going to ignore any threats that he throws out. At some point, he's going to recognize that he doesn't get the capability of doing this. Europe is already a vassal state. Europe has been a vassal state for a very long time. They're willing to kiss the ring. They're willing to bend over and spread ass cheek. Russia, Iran, North Korea, China, etc. They are not. The sooner the U.S. realizes that, the better off it will be. My man is here. Excellent. I am joined with the man himself, Michael Maloof. Michael Maloof is a former senior security policy analyst in the Office of Secretary of Defense, author, and regular contributing analyst on RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years of federal service experience in the U.S. Department of Defense. Michael, how you doing today, my man? You doing okay?
I'm hanging in there. How are you?
Yeah, I'm hanging in too. Dragging a bit of ass, but I'm hanging in. I'm glad that you could join me, actually. You're the
Thanks for having me.
I'm curious to talk to on this. So Donald Trump has lowered his ultimatum from 50 days. Again, Taco Trump. Trump always chickens out. In this case, you could say always cops out, is erratic, etc. I don't know if he realizes this, but this kind of leads into my original point that Trump, A, is either a flagrant liar, which I think he is, or B, not entirely in control of his government, which I also think he is. But the fact that you are so inconsistent when you say, okay, 50 days, and then within a few days, because Ukraine is getting the hell beat out of it, you're like, okay, now 10 to 12. Yeah, that doesn't make me trust you more to come into some kind of agreement, deal, or to even take you seriously. He is now down to 10 to 12 days. Give me a take on that. Because I got to be honest with you, I initially believed that the protests was the U.S. way of trying to get rid of Zelensky. I don't think that's the case now. I mean, especially with the notion of, okay, Zelensky is getting the hell beat out of him in regards to on the battlefield. They're about to lose Petros. They're losing Chasiv Yar. They've lost the ability to have manpower to even fill the gaps enough where they can maintain. And so I would imagine somebody told Trump, hey, Ukraine is getting the hell beat out of it. We need to do something, meaning it's his way of trying to protect and save Ukraine. So if they were trying to get rid of Zelensky, this wouldn't be the action. That action would be to just let him fail. Give me your take on the 10-day thing now.
Well, you've raised a number of separate points here. First of all, I think Trump feels frustrated that he's not in control of the situation. He's not. Why isn't Putin listening to him? Everyone else does. Everyone else bows down and kisses the ring, except Putin. And I think that this is frustrating the orange man, and I think that consequently he's upset. Well, I'm going to give it 10 to 12 days. Well, the Russians don't care. You can give it all you want, or you can do it. You can stop tomorrow. What are you going to stop? I mean, you're changing your sides all the time, and I think Putin has been very consistent in what he's doing, and he needs to hold course. What Trump fails to talk about is a number of things that has to do with Ukraine. Number one, they are lobbing drones and what have you into Moscow, and Russians are responding. But you never hear Trump admitting to that. It's always, well, the Russians. I think we have a deal with the Russians, and next thing I know, they're pumping drones and rockets into Kyiv. Well, that was that's generally in response to something which occurred the day before. But you don't hear that out of Trump. He's only getting one side. And I don't think he reads his, he may not even be getting it in his intel. So this is a real problem. And it really demonstrates how he's now surrounded by the neocons. He's not in control. And the other thing too is that Zelensky himself is not showing any effort toward democratization, given what he just did in the with respect to these what do you call it? These
Sapo and Nebu.
The independent anti-corruption groups.
Right.
Even though they're questionable, but at least it was a beginning, and they were independent. Now they're under his appointee, who he controls. So it really demonstrates that democratization is not working. That corruption rules supreme in that country, and even the EU has picked up on that. And even Lindsey Graham is saying this is not good. So, but Trump is just not listening. He just doesn't know what to do. And I think that all that Putin needs to do now is hold the course. The problem that I'm seeing is that he's probably going to get out of this quagmire and to maybe deviate attention away from the Epstein problem. He probably is going to revisit bombing Iran, and I think that's in order to pull attention away. And he's going after it for a number of strategic reasons, which I'm sure he's been briefed on, that Iran is absolutely key to the rise of the BRICS countries, the multipolar world order, because Russia, China really look upon Iran as a keystone in their north, south, east, west corridors, especially for Belt and Road Initiative as well as BRICS. So, and also it is and they want to, if the intention, I don't know if this is Trump's intention or it's the neocons and CIA surrounding him without telling him, their intention is to contain Russia because they haven't been all that successful in Ukraine. So now they're going to hit the underbelly, the soft underbelly, which would be the Caucasus and such as Armenia, Georgia, Azerbaijan especially. And you also have the Ukrainians and the Israelis now assisting the Azerbaijanis.
Yes.
And as well as Turkey. So this is something that has, I think, grabbing the attention of Putin. He's watching that, as well as the fact that that the West's approach toward the underbelly of Russia is also to not only take out Iran, but also serve as a containment for Russia in the south. So I think we're in for further conflict and uncertainty in the weeks to come.
I would imagine this time around, if Iran is attacked, I get the sense that China and Russia are going to dump any and everything in their power. Because
I think they'll help. I think they'll help them. But I think they'll help. But the agreement that Russia has with Iran is not an Article 5 type of an arrangement.
That is true.
They'll give them assistance.
Right.
I envision that they'll give them more missiles and anti-aircraft, anti-missile protection.
Well, I get the sense that the last time Iran seemingly has this habit of, okay, we'll let you get one shot we'll give you a warning, and then we are going to get more aggressive. Like the Israelis, apparently in the publication, they were pointing out that Israel had no clue that Iran was going to hit it in the way that it hit it. Like they went for they hit him hard. And Israel was like, yeah, but they've always really just played around the last few times that we've struck them. Not realizing, oh, they're being serious right now. They're going after residential areas in some cases. They're going after our military locations. They know their military locations. They can hit our military locations. Oh, and our air defense that we were getting from the United States is basically Swiss cheese. Like they had all of these delusions about what they were going to be able to accomplish in the context of the missile strike. I don't think, and give me your take on this, that Iran can allow the United States to just hit it without response. And I don't mean this nonsense response on Al-Udaid base. I mean, to actually respond in a way that is severe. Because otherwise, what do you allow? You effectively allow the US to be able to attack you at will and turning you into Syria or something like that. I mean, but give me your take on that.
Well, I think the U.S. should have been starting to clear out those 35 bases we have surrounding Iran, and for that very reason, because even though they were meant to be a deterrence is no longer the issue here. I mean, it's no longer a deterrence. Iran has proven that it will strike out and has that capability. They have not used all their hypersonics, and I think that they're probably building them all the time. And so it's in their underground facilities. So they have a capability, and I think they're just keeping their powder dry. And I think the Israelis may try, and the U.S. may team up to go after Iran again. But Israel will suffer the consequences, I think, even though they may try to attempt to take out the supreme leader and the other leadership. But I think they've learned from. I think the Iranians have probably learned from past experience and have made adjustments as a result. But in terms of Trump's reactions, he's flailing. He's flailing around. He doesn't know what to do, and he does not want to open up another front, but he may be coerced into it. Now, he's beginning to show some signs of disagreement with Netanyahu on some very critical points, and particularly on the starvation issue with respect to the Palestinians. And so hopefully, again, the guy just blows hot and cold. There's no consistency in his approach. And I think maybe he's playing one off against the other constantly in order to keep everybody off guard and try to maintain the lead and the leverage and trying to bring closure to these lingering, endless conflicts.
Why do you believe he disagrees with Netanyahu? I haven't seen that up to this point.
There are a few areas, particularly on the starvation issue. Netanyahu flat out said there was no starvation. And I think too that if he wants to go in and take the Gaza Strip, this launching of the Greater Israel project, as it were, I think that might be a problem. It's not what Trump signed up for, because Netanyahu really cannot do it without U.S. backing. He just can't do it, and he's already talking about cutting off some armaments once again because of some disagreements. So I think that I'd like to see that division enlarge greatly.
I don't believe there's a division. I mean, I can show you the video where Donald Trump said, well, Hamas is stealing the food, which means, by definition.
Even the IDF said they were not stealing the food. The IDF itself said that.
I'm saying it doesn't matter. Trump is the one who is effectively making this argument where he's like, well, hey, man.
Again, it's what we would call a puma. Pulling it out of his, you know what?
I know, but if he
doesn't have facts. Even the IDF says Hamas is not stealing the food. It's seen, and there is video, and Trump admits now he sees that the Israelis are denying the food and has been doing so, and will not allow certain things to come in. Now they're talking about annexing portions of Gaza.
Yeah.
Now, is that what he
Definitely.
wants? And basically that means Israel takes over that area, and I don't think that's what was originally in the cards.
But Trump, I don't know why you think Trump disagrees. Look, I lived through, so did you, the Joe Biden administration, where Joe Biden,
Yeah.
oh, we're working tirelessly to get a deal. Oh, we're trying to get the hostages. We're trying to get food in. We're trying to do this. We're trying to do that. And said it for years. And then what happens? I think it was Channel 4, Channel 14, one of them, comes out with quotes from the Israelis saying, thank God Joe Biden was in office. God was looking down on us when they put Joe Biden in that office. Joe Biden didn't ask us for anything. Joe Biden didn't pressure us for anything. Meaning all of that stuff was for public consumption, not reality. I don't know why you think Trump is different.
Trump said he has now seen the pictures of the starving children.
Right.
He said that. And he says that's not what he was bargaining for. Now, that has made an impression. He said that just yesterday in his news conference with the British Prime Minister. So, I can only go by what he says. But on the other hand, I think that Trump is, again, not in control of things like he thought he would be, and he's not getting anywhere with Putin. And Putin just needs to stay the course. The Russians, there are no sanctions that will work on Russia. They just are not going to work. And in fact, it's made over time. It's made Iran, Russia, and China self-reliant.
Yes.
If sanctions have actually backfired, it's made them more resilient, more self-sufficient, and as a consequence, the weaponization of our economies and the dollar have backfired, and we're seeing that increasingly. And even the BRICS countries are snubbing their noses with these indirect sanctions. They don't care. They'll just work through their alternative financial system that they've now created, and it'll be the quality of goods that come out of the Eurasian economies, which amount to more than the G7 combined, will be more than enough and adequate enough for the developing countries of the world in terms of upgrading them. They don't need the West, although they would like to have the West do investments and what have you, but they can live without it, and they're showing that now because they are resisting.
Yeah. What do you make of, there was this axis of resistance at one point, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Jesus Christ, I'm blanking. But it seems that is flipped on its head, where you have this kind of weird axis of, Sarah was like evil, axis of evil, where you have Israel, Azerbaijan, Ukraine.
The axis of resistance still exists. They're just keeping a low profile for now. Yeah, they've been weakened. Admittedly, they've been weakened. Hezbollah still has refused to give up its weapons, and that is a condition of Israel. Israel's intention is to take over parts of Syria, which will put it in conflict with Turkey, certainly, and also they want northern Lebanon, and that's going to be resisted at all costs. So and Hezbollah leadership has already stated as such. They refuse, even though the U.S. says that's a condition. Hezbollah has already said they refuse to give up their weapons.
Yeah.
And I think that it's going to be Israel's call. If Israel wants to be in perpetual war, that they're going to get it, because it'll be by attrition. They're weakening. Their economy, the Israeli economy, is going down, down, down. And people, and internally, they're on the verge of a civil war there. You got the settlers, and I mean, you look at what the settlers are doing, and then you have the rebellion by the ultra conservative religious types.
Right.
They're rebelling, and because of the draft that's been imposed on them. So Netanyahu's got some serious problems, and it's conceivable that his coalition could walk.
He seems to be plowing through, and the U.S. seems to be coming up with these Abraham Accords. Well,
the Abraham Accords now are being weaponized by the Israelis. It's
Yes.
no longer. It's no longer coming to an accommodation among the Arab states, and that it's now being weaponized, that it will be on Israeli terms on whether there would be Abraham Accords, and right now, given their expansionist mentality and the Israeli genocide against Palestinians, and I might add against Lebanese and against the Syrians. They've been bombing at will around Damascus. I mean, who does that? I mean, these are sovereign countries, and yet Israelis just feel empowered to do all of this because they can, and no one's stopping them. And this is setting up in one sense a fear, but also a resistance. So and it's not going to go on for much longer.
Wait, resistance from who?
Eventually, I think Hezbollah will rise up.
Oh, I see.
If they continue to attack the South, as they've been doing, and the North, because they want the North. Look, because of Israel's relationship with ISIS, which is what is coming out of Syria right now.
Syria, right.
Lebanon refuses to submit to that. They will not be subjugated to an ISIS takeover. And that's where Hezbollah will come in. And that there will be a major fight within Lebanon if that occurs. And we know there's a history of Israel using ISIS and Al Qaeda for its own purposes.
Yeah, Shalani's dogs, those filthy animals that they're effectively using.
And even
as
he's
weapons.
not in full control.
No.
I mean, you've got other elements, militias that are nipping at his heels right now. So it's really he's not on solid ground. Shalani is not on solid ground.
I guess it's
Even though he's trying to give an outward portrayal of trying to get along with the West and all of this stuff and be diplomatic, but the man is just one step away from being Al Qaeda again.
Explain to me something. I mean, for one, he doesn't control his own country. There's that. Two, if a foreign government can tell you don't come to the South, then you don't control your own country at that point.
No, you're not.
And yet, you would get Bedouins who are asking people, are you Druze? And the person would say Syrian, and then the person would say, I didn't ask you that. Meaning you have these kind of ethnic divisions that Jelani is clearly on some level behind. But more to the point, within these ethnic divisions, they would say the Druze are working with the Israelis. When Jelani is allowing Israel to bomb Damascus to the hilt and take territory, it's so contradictory.
Oh yeah, there's no. Jelani is not in control, and the West is trying to dictate the terms. Right now, Jelani is backed by the West. It's backed by the United States,
right?
And the other Western countries. They've taken Jelani off the terrorist list, but at the same time, I think the United States is really upset with Israel, and this is another bone of contention that we raised earlier. That they actually launched attacks into the Druze inside of Syria. The Israelis attacked, and they were back in the Druze, and the Druze historically have always been aligned with the Israelis, even in Lebanon during the Civil War, everything.
But why do you think the U.S. is bothered by it?
Why is the U.S. what?
Bothered by it. You said that the U.S. didn't necessarily agree with
Oh,
Netanyahu's.
they were, well, they did. They launched protests with Israel for getting involved in the mess and launching attacks inside of Syria, ostensibly on behalf of the Druze, and the Druze, which were attacking the Arabs that were living in the region, in the Syrian region. It's their country. They wanted to take over, and the Druze from Israel came on over into Syria to back up the Druze which were in Syria, and started attacking, backed by the Israeli firepower. And that's what the State Department objected to.
Were the Druze really
Rubio
attacking the Bedouins?
raised objections. What?
I mean, I know that that's what they put out, that the Druze were attacking the Bedouins, but were they
Yeah.
really doing that? I mean, was it really?
Yeah,
a
they were.
provocation? But Jelani's guys, I mean, when they were going after the Alawites weren't attacking anybody, or the Christians weren't attacking anybody.
That's correct.
So
That's why
should
Jelani's not in full control. It was not his call. He didn't order those attacks. Those were other militias.
I don't believe that. Oh, I don't believe that.
Right
I
now,
could be
he's
wrong,
trying to
but
give
please,
a,
make a case,
he's
make
trying
a
to give a portrait of himself as a reasonable, compromising guy that wants to work with the outside world. He's not going to be ordering attacks. It's going to be coming from other militias that he cannot control, even though he's supposed to be in control, but he's not.
So the
That's why
militias
I don't
just
think
went rogue.
Jelani's going to last that much longer.
So the militias just went rogue.
Yeah.
Jelani had nothing to do with
Yeah.
it, despite the fact
Yeah,
that he was
these
ISIS.
militias all have their own agendas. They want to partition Syria. Syria is not going to be what it used to be. It's not going to be united in any way, shape, or form. It's never been. It's never been united. But they're going to be areas of control by different segments. And then you got the Kurds, and then you've got and Jelani wants the Kurds to integrate into the Syrian armed forces. I think that they're resisting, even though they're sort of paying lip service to it, but they're resisting. You got the Turks there who think that they are managing Jelani and his ilk, but it's going to put them in direct conflict with the Israelis. And so I see the Turks and the Israelis coming to loggerheads here pretty soon.
Even though
over Syria.
the Turks have effectively helped the Israelis up to this point.
Oh yeah, they've helped them, but the Turks do not want the Israelis coming in and bombing Syria.
Right.
And that's a major bone of contention with the Turks.
One last point before I let you go. I was trying to make this point about this kind of anti-Iran axis that seems to be being created using Azerbaijan, Ukraine, even Israel. Even if we take the Abraham Shield, as they call it, off the table, this is still somewhat of an axis that's being created where they seem to be going after containing, quote unquote, but containing doesn't quite sound right because they've already made airstrikes on Iran.
Containing Iran or containing Russia?
Containing God, I guess you can say on some level both, because
yeah, it is.
Yeah,
but they're using, but it's also meant as a staging area. Azerbaijan was a staging area for attacks, recent Israeli attacks into Iran.
Yeah,
and we knew about the bases. Yeah, we knew that would be a step off point to do just that. They have a base. They have a secret base there. Israelis do.
Do you think they're going to be able to get that corridor? What is it called? Zang?
Well, there are two corridors involved, and I forget the name of them. But
Yeah.
The IDF basically controls one of the corridors in Azerbaijan, which is just above Iran.
Right. I guess it's the one where Armenia was supposed to, there was reporting that Armenia was going to sell it to the United States for 99 years, some insane amount of time. And then
Well,
Armenia came back and said, hey, this isn't
well,
true.
there's also a
We're not
second
wanting-
quarter, which would give the U.S. access as well. The U.S. would have access in the one corridor, and the Israelis would have access in the other corridor, as I understand it. And Azerbaijan has allowed that, and it's meant to counter Iran, but also the U.S. sees an opportunity here to use it to establish a foothold in the Caucasus. And this is not new. I mean, it began under Biden, in which there was an increasing effort to do this, to use the NGOs as a foothold into the region. Now, Georgia, on the other hand, is beginning to look more toward Russia, and EU is threatening, is no longer considering Georgia's application to join the EU, which only makes Russia happy. But the whole area is just turning, and then the Turks also are engaged because they are very close allies with Azerbaijan as well, and they also have their own agenda because they see this as a growth of the Neo-Ottoman Empire. So you still have that in contention. This is a means of Erdogan spreading Turkic influence through the region once again. And it's ancient. I mean, when I was in Central Asia, and worked out of Central Asia, you can definitely see the Turkish influence in the region. And they want to reestablish that and make it much greater. So it just never ends. And we get involved. We don't know how to get out of it. We muddy the waters. We ought to just let them all work out their own issues. We're never going to resolve these issues. And we're always going to be involved militarily. And it's sapping our strength. It's sapping our ability to do things that we need to do here at home.
Yeah.
Our infrastructure is falling apart in the United States, and we're worrying about everybody else's, and all they're doing is blowing things up, and then we pay to repair them, and they blow it up again. But there's a pattern that we should have been picking up on and saying, we can't continue to do this, but we seem to be doing the same old thing over and over again, hoping for a different outcome, and it's just not happening. Did someone say that that's the very definition of insanity? We're seeing it.
Michael, man, I always appreciate these conversations. I really do.
Okay.
Michael Maloof, he is former senior security policy analyst in the Office of Secretary of Defense, author, and regular contributing analyst on RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years of federal service experience. Thank you for this, my man. I really do appreciate it. You be safe.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Have a good one. All right. We have come to the end. We've come to the end. What he said is the definition of insanity. Let's be honest, we help push that insanity, by the way. We help push that insanity. Let's go to the chat real quick. Jamal, what is the future of Palestine looks for you? I hope Dimitri is right. I hope Dimitri is right about Israel. What does the future of Palestine look for you? Oh, God, don't ask me that. I don't know how to answer that question. I mean, look, if you'd have asked me 2 years ago, would the world allow a genocide to take place? I would have said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Fast forward to today, and there is no Leviathan, there is no safety, and absolutely, yes, the world would perfectly allow it. And they would make excuses for it as it takes place. And then they would shake their hands as babies walk around starved, as kids fall over in starvation, or is shot as they were walking away with food. And they would say, oh my God, this is so bad. Oh my God, this looks so bad. Even though they would have defended it for the last year and a half. if you ever wondered how Nazi Germany ended up the way Nazi Germany ended up, look at the media organizations in the US, look at the media organizations in Europe, look at the political class in Europe, look at the political class in the US. That is how Nazi Germany becomes Nazi Germany. People often ask, how on earth did they allow that to take place? Right here, a modern example of it. It's not in black and white, it's in color. You can see it with your own eyes. You can see the newspaper headlines coming out of the New York Times, Washington Post, any random newspaper coming out of Europe. You can see it. You can talk to people in Europe who would come out and say, yeah, but you got to protect Israel, right? Look at Germany and Austria, the behavior that they've effectively had in those two countries. They are fucking appalling. So my point is, you can see it with your own eyes, how that stuff develops. And you can see it in your political space and your media space. How do I think it turns out? I don't know. That's my honest answer. I don't know. They're going to try to commit a genocide. I disagree with Michael Maloof. I don't think there's any division between Donald Trump and Netanyahu. Trump is a sociopath. I don't think he cares about human life at all. I think he cares about his ego, not human life. And so if he needs to come on and say, well, Gaza, Hamas is stealing the food, he will say that in order to defend his client state Israel. He would do it. He would do it in a heartbeat. He would do it vigorously. Anything else that somebody's saying of, well, he's not getting intelligence, or I don't care. I don't know. Who knows? It doesn't matter. What matters to me is that you can see it with your own eyes. And so this idea, Trump is a flagrant, habitual liar. My rule is that habitual liars lie. Donald Trump lies about anything. Oh, the inflation has gone down. Dude, have you seen the cost of food? But Donald Trump doesn't make his own groceries, so how would he know, right? Oh, we're just winning. We're winning. We're killing it. You're not. You're not. You're creating chaos around the globe. You're not a peace president. You're not taking, like, oh, I was directly involved in India and Pakistan. No, you weren't. No, you weren't. You weren't. I'm a peace president. No, you're not. You're not. Like, meaning a habitual liar lies. So for a person to come on and say, yeah, man, I mean, I feel some kind of way about that, I don't believe you. No, you don't. Habitual liars lie. Sociopaths are sociopaths. Those things are sacrosanct. They're one-to-one. Trump is both. So no, just because he says it, I don't believe it. I have a larger context to know that he's a habitual fucking liar. So I love Michael Maloof to death. Love him to death. I completely disagree with him on this. When I see Trump bomb civilians in Yemen who are at some kind of religious ceremony, and he puts it on the Department of Defense video, cheering it on. Okay. That tells me about your character, right? When I see him starve people to death in Palestine, because it is him doing it. Let's be very clear. The money that we give Israel doesn't exist if the United States doesn't allow it to exist. Don't give me this nonsense about Netanyahu. Don't give me this nonsense about the Israeli government. They are nothing without the United States effectively backing what they're doing. So, you know, when I see the president give excuses for it, lie about it, shill, going from point A to point B. Joe Biden, the same thing. Joe Biden, same thing, same animal. That at some point he is, you know, he will be put out to pasture. And the world will get a bit brighter when Joe Biden's head hits the ground for the last time, and his heart stops and his lungs stop breathing and he shits himself. The world will be a bit brighter on that day. The point that I'm making here is that none of that stuff exists without the US president allowing it to exist. So, you know, this idea that, oh my God, Donald Trump heart bleeds. No, it doesn't. It should, but it doesn't. Wish it would. It doesn't. Wish it would. Wish it would. It does not. I have no idea how it turns out. You're our vassals. They don't matter. The Quisling governments of Saudi Arabia, UAE, et cetera, they don't matter. They're worthless in any real sense of the word, and working with a genocidal monster. Erdogan is a snake in the grass through and through, works with a genocidal monster. So all of these Quisling governments that gives voice, oh my God, we don't like this. Yeah, but you've supported it, backed it, defended it for the last year and a half as the process of genocide is taking place. Albanese, when she makes this point of saying, look, genocide is not an overnight thing, it's a process. Yes, And you would think that governments in Europe that effectively started the Second World War, with Germany being the main proponent, Germany and Austria, of those concentration camps, would have known better. Apparently they don't. So the moment that you get a world, not just a couple of countries, but a world that backs the genocide for all intents and purposes, who knows, right? Like, this is not two countries where you're at war with the two countries. And at that point, you can feel some kind of way about the fact that they're murdering people and you have starving Jews. This is not that. This is a large proponent of world powers in Western countries and in the Middle East that says we approve, or at the very least, we will look the other way, with the US as a superpower funding it. How does that turn out? I have no idea. Just being honest, I don't know. I mean, I don't buy this premise that Donald Trump cares about starving babies. I don't buy that at all. I think he's perfectly okay with it. He's a sociopath. I don't buy this premise that he cares about kids being shot in the back, getting food. I don't buy the premise. I think he's a monster. So, you know, like, if you're asking me, like, these weak governments that has allowed this to take place when it was obvious it was taking place for a year and a half, and hell, go before October 7th, it was obvious that you had a racist, fascist, murderous government that was already in place for all of those years. And you uncorked that bottle with everybody else effectively giving them license to do this. What do you expect? That's my point of view. What do you expect? Now, you get European governments that are now responding to their population saying, hey, I don't like the look of 4-year-olds, skeletal, walking like ghosts. It's like, dude, the starvation has been taking place before this. It may not have gotten to this extent, but it was taking place before this. And all of this talk about, well, Israel's now allowing food into the, you realize that the military is defending people in Israel who don't want food going in because the majority of the public agrees. And they are backing them as they try to prevent the food from going in. Do you realize that Israel has gangs that are in Gaza to steal the food? I hope you get my point. It's one thing to say, okay, we're going to allow food in. It's another thing for that food to get to the locations. Those are different things. So I would imagine they're going to starve a lot of people. I imagine at the end of this, they're going to find out that a hell of a lot more people have been killed, murdered, or dead. I imagine they're going to probably try to create the concentration camp. They're going to try to make it by moving people into smaller and smaller areas to create their ghetto. Whether or not that becomes a death camp and whether or not the rest of the world is okay with a death camp. China hasn't gotten involved. Russia hasn't gotten involved. Those are the other powers that would be able to do anything about it in order to make their attention or presence felt. For the most part, they've just bitched on the sidelines. So I don't know. That's grim, but it's just being honest. Black Spock. Ruling class is the list. Ruling class is the list. Black Spock. What is this? FUZP64. Thank you, FUZP64. That is a weird name. Pink Rose. Child in Gaza asks the men, quote, if there's food in heaven, unquote, what a nightmare we live in. Yes. From my point of view, we as a civilization are relinquishing our right to exist. That's assuming that anybody has a right to exist. I said this before, man. I get the, I heard airdrops were tried. Yeah, and we're killing people. And the idea that you need to have airdrops when the airdrop thing was always weird to me. But yes, apparently they were tried. Let's see, when the good way prevails in the states, speak boldly and act boldly. When the state will act softly, Confucius. When the good way prevails in the state, speak boldly and act boldly. When the state has lost the way, act boldly, it speaks softly. Confucius. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Nations are required by international law. There's no such thing as international law. I keep saying that. I know I keep saying that. Nobody believes. There is no such thing as international law. There's not. There is no Leviathan. There is nothing above us. There is no safety. There is nothing that intervenes in order to protect, short of human agreement. And if you don't have that, you have nothing. So I get they wrote it down. I can write down anything. I can write down anything. Doesn't make it a law. Doesn't make it a law. The UN is useless. Yes, the UN is useless. They don't have to be. They don't have to be. I mean, the UN could take muscular action, but at the point where you have a captured number of countries, then yeah, it becomes useless. Law in the political sense, or let's say the international sense, requires consent. And in the context of consent, it's not like you have rational, or let's say honest actors that are coming to some kind of assessment. No, these people act within their interests. So what is in the US interest? What is in Britain's interest? What is in France's interest? Well, they're going to defend and protect the white world. Their colony, Israel, is committing a genocide, so they defend their colony as it defends a genocide. It's that. That's, again, consensus. Oh my God, Russia's stealing kids. Okay, so Russia's taking kids off the battlefield, right? And Ukraine says there's 30,000 of them. And then you say, okay, where's the list? And they give them a list of 300, many of which are not even in Ukraine. It's like, okay, get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. It's just outrageous. It's so outrageous. It is so outrageous. All right. I am going to end this. I'm going to end this. I want to thank all of you who donated. As I say it every show, many of these shows get demonetized. Your support helps keeps the show ticking along. Your support helps keeps the show going, especially with that title. I'm almost certain the show is going to be demonetized. I appreciate you for that. Whether it's PayPal, Patreon, Super Chats, Super Stickers, memberships, all of those things are deeply appreciated, and I appreciate you for them. I'm trying to think, is there anything else? Oh, I have a damn good show for you tomorrow also. Colonel Wilkerson, not Wilkerson. Yeah, it is Wilkerson. And Dennis Fritz, or I should say Chief. I always call him Chief. Both of them are going to be on tomorrow. In the panel, there was something else. I think Esteban is going to be on at 8. KJ No, of course. There is a 7 o'clock guest that I am just blanking on. Okay, maybe there's not a 7 o'clock guest. Okay, there will be a 7 o'clock guest. And it will be a good one. Look, guys, you all have a fantastic day. I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Stay safe. Be kind to the degree that you can be kind. What is this? Just admit it that you're not in a position to lecture China over morality as long as you remain complicit and not including your criminal government accountable. Uh-oh. They're going after China. Right here. LMBO, just facts, no slander. With Vietnam as, what is this, $19 billion to Israel. With imports, the Chinese regime enables hell just like the United States government. Two sides of the same BS. Oh, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. Oh, I don't buy that. I think you're so wrong on that one. Look, it is one thing for me to support something. I agree with you. That's problematic, to say the least. You have my agreement, U.S. Navy vet. It is another thing to say that a government that is completely complicit in paying for it. Those are two different things. Me paying for a genocide is different than me eating at Starbucks or drinking coffee at Starbucks. And yes, I know the scale is very different, but I'm trying to make the point of saying me buying your products or something to that effect is very different than me giving you billions of dollars in order for you to commit the genocide. I mean, for example, Turkey. Turkey gives them oil. That is atrocious. Turkey shouldn't give them anything. Agreed. But it's different than Turkey giving them, or let's say providing oil or oil transits, as opposed to the United States directly paying for it. Those are different things. China could stop. Israel still may keep going because the United States may compensate. If the US stops, Israel collapses. Those are different things. So I agree with you. Russia and China kind of stand by and just kind of watch. And that is atrocious. Or China supplies them with whatever particular products that Israel buys. Again, that is atrocious. I think it's a different animal, though, that you are effectively a proxy of the United States government. They're not a proxy of China. Those things are different. 70%. The last I checked, it was 70%, 70 to 80% of what they were using for bombs, bullets, etc., was coming out of the US. So I could be wrong. The morality lessons from China might be quenching our thirst for knowledge to prevent, what is this? To prevent hostility based on jealousy of a thief towards a working person. Look, I think states act within their own interests. They may have certain cultural vagaries, agreed. But a moral state, I don't know if I buy the premise of a moral state. They're just states. They're just laws, legal fictions. Yes, I am complacent. I'm a US taxpayer. Agreed. I don't hide the ball on that. I mean, I bitch about it all the time. All right, I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. You guys have a fantastic day. We'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Signing off.